Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto wielded mjolnir of Thor? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Nataku's Wrath for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Naruto panted in exhaustion. He stood with his arms and legs spread apart, braced against the thick tree branch he stood on, blocking Orochimaru's giant snake summon from devouring his teammates. Sasuke and Sakura. His whisker marks were thicker and darker, his canines and fingernails longer and feral sharp signs of the nine-tailed fox's influence. Is that it? That's all the great Orochimaru's got. Taunted Naruto as he fought to keep the snake at bay. A bunch of cheap tricks and overgrown snakes. Why you little pest? Seethed Orochimaru. How dare you insult the greatest of the Sannin? I'll have your skin for a rug on my floor. Eat him and keep his bones for a toothpick. You'll have to do a lot better than this guy then, Naruto smirked as he spun around and stabbed the giant snake in the eye with a kunai. The snake let out a cry of pain before returning to the summon world in a cloud of smoke. Weakling serpent, cursed Orochimaru. I ought to turn Manda into a wallet for recommending that overgrown hatchling. Naruto panted from exhaustion. Being blown through the forest, using the nine tails chakra and holding that huge snake back had taken a lot out of him. But he kept a smile on his face and pointed his kunai at Orochimaru. He took a quick glimpse at his two teammates, both Sasuke and Sakura were still frozen in fear and astonishment. Naruto turned his head slightly toward Sasuke and smiled. You're not hurt, are you scaredy cat? Naruto's taunt cut through Sasuke deeper than any blade ever could, and the teen snapped back to reality. Sasuke activated his Sharingan and leveled a glare at Orochimaru. Kukuku. Look who joined the party, Orochimaru laughed. Those eyes, oh those eyes. Kukuku, I can't wait to try them myself. What do you mean? You're not an Uchiha. The Uchiha are the elite of all shinobi. You're just a wretched old pretender, Sasuke sneered in his usual arrogance. Foolish boy. You really have no idea what horrors you stand against, Orochimaru sneered. Bring it on. Naruto shouted and stepped in front of Sasuke. Red chakra leaked off Naruto's body, slowing beginning to assume a vague shape around his body like a cloak. I'll take on you and all your slimy pets, believe it. Snakes aren't slimy, Orochimaru bristled and sank into the tree trunk. Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura searched the trees for him, but there was no trace of the traitorous Sannin. I guess he took off, Naruto smirked. He spun his kunai around his finger before returning it to his pouch. I can't believe that guy had you and Sakura shaking in your sandals, Sasuke. Shut up Naruto. Sasuke-kun was about to destroy Orochimaru when you had to go and show off with that stupid little snake. Screamed Sakura, the insult to her precious Sasuke snapping her out of her frightened daze. What do you mean little? That thing was huge. Naruto protested. While the two continued to bicker, Sasuke leaned against the tree trunk and pressed a bandage on the small, self-inflicted wound on his leg. I can't believe I froze like that. His power, it was much worse than Zabuza's. Why did I freeze and Naruto didn't when he was terrified by Zabuza? It must have been that red chakra that was leaking off of Naruto. I need that power. Sasuke stepped away from the tree trunk and was about to grab a hold of Naruto when a sinister laughter cut through the air. The three genin spun around in circles but couldn't see anything. The laughter stopped and a soft twinkling of musical notes replaced it. 3 pairs of eyes and not a single pair that can see a thing, Orochimaru said calmly as he appeared in front of Naruto with one hand behind his back. He leaned down and whispered directly into Naruto's ear. But I can see. Kukuku, I see what you are. Jinchuriki. Naruto froze in shock and terror. How could he know about the fox? Inside its cage, the nine-tailed fox growled and tried to force more chakra through the seal and into Naruto. Naruto's body shook with a sudden flux of power, and red chakra poured off his body, forming a pair of long ears over Naruto's head and the beginnings of a bushy tail. Now there will be none of that, Orochimaru smirked, and the fingertips of his hidden hand burst into purple flame. 5-element seal. Orochimaru plunged his burning hand into Naruto's stomach. The blow tore through Naruto's insides, cutting off the nine tails chakra and disrupting his own chakra's flow. The red chakra vanished into the air, and Naruto's features quickly returned to normal as he sank to his knees in front of Orochimaru. Pathetic street urchin, I'll teach you to insult your betters. Orochimaru snarled and kicked Naruto across the chest with all his strength. Naruto shot through the air in an orange-colored blur and smashed into another tree with a bone-crunching thud. He hung there for a second, the force of the impact in perfect equilibrium against gravity, before he began to fall forward into empty space, and then the forest floor hundreds of feet below. Naruto. Sasuke shouted and hurled a kunai at his teammate. The kunai barely missed Naruto's shoulder and pinned his jumpsuit to the tree, preventing him from falling to his doom. You shouldn't turn your back on your opponent, Sasuke-kun, hissed Orochimaru. In a burst of speed, the snake Sannin unnaturally extended his neck at Sasuke. The neck snaked around Sasuke's body, pinning his arms to his sides, and Orochimaru sank his fangs deep into Sasuke's neck. Sasuke screamed in pain as Orochimaru's venom spread like fire through his body and then collected back at the bite marks. A trio of black Tomo-shaped marks, eerily similar to Sasuke's Sharingan, appeared just above the bite marks on the back of Sasuke's neck. Fukikuku. I've given you a little gift, Sasuke-kun, Orochimaru hissed sweetly into Sasuke's ear. Use its power and become stronger than your brother ever dreamed on being. This is but the beginning of what I could teach you. Seek me out and I shall bestow even more power onto you than you could imagine. At least, if you survive this. Orochimaru unwound his neck from Sasuke's body and retracted it to its normal length and shape. Remember what I said, Sasuke-kun. Survive and seek me out, the Sannin said before crumbling into dust. A mud clone? Exclaimed Sakura as she rushed to Sasuke's aid. She caught the boy just before he collapsed and held him in her lap. She looked around, but didn't see a single trace of Orochimaru. Good riddance, she muttered and returned her attention to Sasuke. She placed a hand on Sasuke's brow and pulled away quickly. Odds, you're burning up, Sakura muttered and shifted the boy slightly, doing her best to resist groping her crush and failing in the process, and reached into her pack for her water rations. She opened the canteen and carefully poured a small mouthful into Sasuke's mouth. The boy swallowed the liquid and shuddered in pain. I need to get you out of here, Sakura grunted as she struggled to pick up Sasuke's dead weight. She finally managed to hoist Sasuke onto her shoulders in a fireman's carry and, when she stood up to collect her pack, suddenly remembered Naruto. She looked up and saw him hanging from the tree, not moving and unconscious. I can't leave Naruto here all alone. If one of the other teams doesn't get him, one of the animals in this damn forest will. But I can barely carry Sasuke-kun, there's no way I can carry them both at the same time. While Sakura wrestled with a moral conundrum, a sharp ripped her through the treetops. Sakura's eyes grew wide as Naruto's jumpsuit dripped beneath the kunai holding him against the tree. She held her breath, hoping that the first rip would be it, that the cloth would hold and Naruto would stay right there until she could get Sasuke somewhere safe and come back for him. The second rip risked the idea from her mind. Naruto's body slumped and swayed against the tree trunk, every movement making the rip larger. Desperate, Sakura reached into her kunai pack and hurled a kunai at Naruto's sleeve, hoping to pin him back in place. But Sasuke's weight ruined her aim, and the kunai buried itself in Naruto's shoulder, piercing flesh as well as cloth. Sakura winced at the sight and would have covered her face in shame if Sasuke hadn't let out a painful and shuddered violently. It took all of Sakura's feeble strength to keep him on her shoulders. SS Sakura, Sasuke whispered between painful breaths. Sakura blushed deeply, her inner self swelled with pride. Ah. Sasuke-kun needs me, he's calling out to me while he's hurt. When he needs help the most, he's calling out for me. This is it, once I nurse him back to health, he'll take me into his arms and… Another loud rip ripped Sakura off cloud 9 as the thread holding Naruto in place gave way. He fell off the tree and plummeted toward the forest floor. Naruto. Sakura cried out and ran to the edge of the branch she stood on, but didn't go after him. I have to take care of Sasuke-kun, she thought. There's nothing I can do for Naruto anymore. Sasuke-kun needs me. That's right. There was nothing anyone could have done. But Sasuke-kun still has a chance. He's fighting for his life, fighting for love. He needs you to help him while there's still time. But Naruto. Ah. One Sasuke-kun is better, you both can come back and find Naruto's body. You can give him a proper burial, that's what teammates do, right? And afterwards you can console Sasuke-kun and help revive his clan. Sakura blushed and giggled before she shifted Sasuke on her shoulders, so her hands were freer to roam along his body while she carried him. She cast one last look in the direction Naruto fell, before hurrying off to find a place to nurse Sasuke back to health. Hitting the first tree knocked Naruto back into consciousness and into a world of pain. He crashed through the forest canopy, smashing through branches and careening off tree trunks. Naruto felt his ribs snap as he folded across a thick branch, felt his arm tear against the rough bark of another tree, and finally, after falling for hundreds of feet, plunged headfirst into a deep, circular-shaped lake. The calm surface of the water felt like a cement wall to Naruto. The impact blew all the air out of Naruto's lungs. Naruto choked on icy water and he struggled to reach the surface. His head broke the surface, and Naruto coughed on the fresh air. Looking down at his bleeding shoulder, Naruto grit his teeth and ripped out the kunai. He looked at the kunai for a second, gave a confused frown the SH initials inscribed on the handle, and tossed it away before treading water. His broken limbs barely able to keep him afloat, Naruto drifted for only a moment before he tired and slipped back beneath the water. Naruto struggled to move his wrecked body, but his efforts did little to slow his descent. Naruto tried to concentrate, tried to focus his chakra to his limbs, but only received blistering pain in his stomach for his efforts. Darkness flirted with the edges of his vision as he sank deeper and deeper. Naruto reached the bottom of the lake and nearly screamed in pain when his arm landed on something incredibly hard. Pain lanced down Naruto's hand, and he looked for the offending object, momentarily forgetting about the danger of drowning. Dirt and mud, kicked up by his rough arrival at the lake bottom, settled and Naruto saw a massive hammer lying on the bottom. The wooden handle, wrapped in brown leather with a leather thong at the end, pointed straight up into the water. The hammer itself was a thick rectangle of gray metal that shined despite the lack of sunlight at the lake bottom. "Reach out," a voice whispered. Naruto shook his head. The lack of oxygen was making him lightheaded. He tried to kick off the bottom, but only drifted a few feet upward before sinking back to the bottom. "Reach out. Prove your worth." High above the lake, storm clouds appeared in the sky. Thunder rumbled and streaks of lightning danced between the clouds. Naruto's vision blurred as his limbs gave up their struggle. He sank to the bottom, chest and belly first, his arms and legs spread lazily at his sides. "Reach out. Reach out. Reach out." Naruto looked closer at the hammer. Words shimmered into existence on the side of the hammer, but Naruto was unable to decipher two upside-down words. His vision darkened. Naruto, using his last bit of strength, reached forward and grabbed onto the hammer's handle. The exertion of that simple task caused Naruto's lungs to finally give out, and he took in a deep breath of water. "It's so quiet down here," Naruto thought, his brain beginning to shut down from the lack of air. "So calm, no one's fighting down here, no one's chasing me or throwing things at me. Guess it's not the worst place to end up." A sad smile pulled at the corners of Naruto's lips. "I'm sorry, old man, I won't be taking that Hokage hat from you after all. I'm sorry, Sasuke, Sakura-chan, I tried my hardest. You'll have to become great ninja without." Naruto's eyes closed for the last time as he drowned. His body convulsed and Naruto unknowingly moved the hammer before his body went completely slack. He never saw the massive lightning bolt crash into the lake. Naruto awoke face down in water. Panicking, he jerked his head up and took a deep breath of foul-smelling air. He was sitting on his hands and knees, the water surrounding him was only a few inches deep. Naruto coughed and looked around. He was in a dank and filthy sewer, a narrow and circular tunnel. The water came from many of the rusted-out pipes bolted to the walls. Naruto got to his feet easily, all the injuries and pains from Orochimaru's attacks and his plummet through the forest were gone. Naruto started walking forward, somehow pulled in that direction. The sounds of battle echoed through the sewer tunnel, and Naruto walked faster. The sewer tunnel opened into a massive chamber, and what filled it stopped Naruto in his tracks. At one end of the chamber was an enormous cage with thick bars and a piece of paper sealing the doors shut. Purple fire danced across the bars of the cage, the effects of Orochimaru's seal. And inside the cage, the nine-tailed fox raged in all its demonic glory. It smashed its body against the cage, ignoring the purple fires that burned its fur, clawed and bit at the bars, and launched its tails like bushy whips through the gaps in the bars. Naruto was so awestruck by the size and ferocity of the tailed beast that he didn't notice what the fox was fighting until he heard a voice ring out. "Wretched beast. Thou art no true demon." Naruto turned and saw a man stand strong against the nine-tails' rage. Naruto had never seen a man so large. The stranger was well over 6 feet tall and covered in thick slabs of muscle from head to toe. And he was the strangest dressed man Naruto had ever seen. He wore a black tunic with 6 metal circles trailing down his chest and abs, a golden belt with strange-looking runes on it, dark blue pants, and golden boots that came up to his knees. A thick red cape covered his back and, atop his blonde head, he wore a silver helm with large wings on either side. The man was wielding the massive hammer Naruto had found at the bottom of the lake, swinging it to block the fox's tails, as if it weighed nothing at all. The man looked over his shoulder and smiled down at Naruto. "I shall be with thee in but a moment," he said in a firm but warm voice. "First, I shall tame this unruly and overcompensating beast." The stranger batted away another of the fox's tails and lifted the hammer over his head. A bolt of lightning appeared out of nowhere and struck the hammer. Naruto stared in amazement as the stranger stood tall, totally unaffected by the shock of lightning, and whirled the glowing hammer over his head. "For Asgard!" The stranger roared and hurled the hammer at the cage. The hammer passed between the bars and, with a crack of thunder that shook the entire chamber, hit the fox between the eyes. The fox let out a high-pitched cry and collapsed onto the ground, its tail strewn out haphazardly in all directions. Naruto's mouth hung open comically as the stranger held out his hand, and the hammer lifted into the air and flew back to the stranger on its own. The stranger placed the hammer on his belt and rolled the kinks out of his shoulders, a bright smile on his face. "This been too long since I did battle, even one as short as this is refreshing," the stranger said, and he looked down at Naruto. "So you are the one that found my hammer. Apologies, I assumed you would be larger." It took Naruto a few more seconds to find his voice. What huh?" The stranger laughed. It was a hearty laugh that started deep within his belly and sprang out happily. Such was the reaction of the last mortals to see my power for the first time, but that was long, long ago. What is your name, little one? Then Naruto. Such a strange name, mused a stranger. But it matters little. I am Thor Odinson, son of Odin and Gia, god of thunder and lord of Asgard. Okay, Mr. Odinson, where are we? Asked Naruto politely. We are in your mind, Naruto. What doth you remember before your arrival in this dismal place? We were fighting that Orochimaru pervert when he hit me in the stomach with some purple fire jutsu and then kicked me into a tree. Next thing I know I'm bouncing off tree branches and tree trunks and then fell into a lake with one of Sakura's kunai in my shoulder. After that I drowned, didn't I? Nay, you didn't drown, Thor shook his head. You started to, but when you moved Mjolnir, you summoned the power of the storm and I came hence to this place. If this is my mind, how are you in here? Just what is going on here? And what the hell is Mjolnir? We are in your mind because my spirit is forever bound to Mjolnir and when you moved it, I was awakened. This is Mjolnir, Thor said and raised the hammer to show Naruto. Naruto squinted as the words he first noticed on the hammer back at the bottom of the lake. Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor, Naruto read. Heh, so that's what that says. Indeed. None may wield Mjolnir save those deemed worthy. Only one individual in all the history of the universe has had the strength to hoist Mjolnir from the ground without being worthy, and, Thor chuckled, you are no Hulk. What's a Hulk? An old friend and occasional enemy, but that is a different story. As to your last inquiry, it is a long story, young Naruto, but it is a tale of heroes, worthy of Valhalla, Thor said. Long, long ago, this world was very different. It was called Midgard and was one of the 9 worlds. Odin, the All-Father, ruled over Asgard, world of the gods, and I was the strongest warrior amongst them. But I grew too proud and Odin banished me here, to Midgard, so that I may learn temperance and humility. For 10 years I lived as a crippled doctor until my father, Odin, restored my godly powers. I remained on Midgard and while here, I fell in love with a beautiful woman named Jane Foster and joined a team of men calling themselves heroes. We became known as the Avengers and were the rock and shield that defended humanity. And for many years, things were good. We battled the forces of evil at all turns, and, verily, we saved the world countless times. But when the All-Father fell in battle, I was called home and became the new ruler of Asgard. I inherited my father's Adinfers and grew much more powerful. My reign, however, grew short with the approach of Ragnarok. Ragnarok, Naruto repeated. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, Thor explained. The end of our world, where the enemies of Asgard would unite and all of Asgard would be consumed by fire and darkness. I confronted the Norns and discovered the true meaning of Ragnarok. The Norns? The Fates, the weavers of destiny. Ragnarok was a cycle of destruction and rebirth, never granting the Asgardians rest, only pain and death eternal. Only Odin, through the Adinfers, knew of the cycle, but he was powerless to stop it. Alongside my brethren, we defeated the foes of Asgard, but suffered great losses. In the end, I was the only one remaining. All my friends and family had fallen and descended into hell. Alone and unwilling to see my brethren suffer through more horrors and bloodshed, I broke the Ragnarok cycle, defied the Norns, ended the destruction of Asgard, and granted my family their rest. What happened to you? Naruto asked. Breaking the cycle exhausted my godly powers, and the wounds I endured throughout Ragnarok had taken their toll on me. However, I suppose I wished to rest more than anything, to see my family again. With my remaining strength, I hurled Mjolnir through the fade between the worlds, across the remains of the Bifrost Bridge, and back to Midgard where I hoped its power may aid my comrades. How long ago was that? Many hundreds of your years, Thor answered sadly. Mjolnir sat and gathered dust. Thousands, nay perhaps millions of souls attempted defeat, but none were deemed worthy to wield Mjolnir. Mjolnir waited until you arrived this day. None of your friends could pick it up. Nay. There was one man that had proven his worth in the past, but, sadly, he had been slain shortly after I departed existence. Sorry about your friend. Nay, there is no need, he was a great warrior, and the halls of Valhalla are brighter with his admittance. And from what I've seen in your memories, Steve would have liked you as well. Alas, I grow sidetracked. Since thee have proven thyself worthy to Mjolnir, you shall become the new Thor. The new you? Nay, ye can never be me, nor as I could never be you, little Naruto. You will always be Naruto, only with an Asgardian addition. The godly essence that binds me to Mjolnir shall pass unto you. You will become half Asgardian, half Elder God, as I was. Thou shalt gain my unending strength, stamina, speed, reflexes, agility, and durability. Your senses will sharpen, your already impressive healing factor shall become true regeneration, you, Naruto, shall become immortal. Mastery of all forms of combat known to me shall be yours, as well as my armors and Mjolnir, the belt of strength. Lastly, Mjolnir and all its powers shall be yours to command. This is insane, muttered Naruto. First I'm dying, now you're saying I'm going to live forever and be super strong, and… Nay, no creature truly lives forever, interrupted Thor. I myself am proof of that. Okay, but still, this is a lot to take in. What about being a ninja? Can I still use chakra? I fear that I know little of this chakra or of being a ninja, Thor admitted. The ninja I knew of were cowards and weaklings, and I can see that is not true in your time. I cannot foresee what will happen when this conversation ends and you take my powers. And what about him? Naruto asked and pointed to the still unconscious Nine Tails. I fear he must remain as well. Perhaps when you are strong enough, there may be a rune spell to remove the beast's taint from you, but alas, it will be still some time until you are able to perform such a task. Hey, yeah, how am I gonna learn how to do all this stuff? Who's gonna train me? Training will be unnecessary, Thor replied. You shall gain my memories and knowledge in the transference, but the powers will grow as you do. Until you fully mature, practical use of your powers will take a long time to master, and much hard work will be needed. In time, as you grow, you will learn from my memories and train until you are as powerful as I was. I was wondering if I was going to wake up all jaunty like you, Naruto smiled and rubbed the back of his head. Jaunty? Yeah, you're the biggest person I've ever seen. Naruto exclaimed. Well, except for Choji's dad when he does his expansion jutsu, but you're still the biggest without using a jutsu. Haha, such would be an interesting sight to see. I too had a friend capable of changing his size from tiny insect to giant man. Such a memory serves purpose. Mjolnir is indestructible and eternal, it was child's play for it to survive the eons until your discovery today. My comrades had no such gifts, but like Mjolnir, perhaps their equipment and technology did. Search the world and you may find the Avengers' legacies, Thor smiled. There's other stuff from your time lying around too. Alright. Temper exuberance with caution, young Naruto. There were other forces, too numerous for count, in my time that fought not for good, but for the most sinister evil. If Mjolnir survived the ravages of time, there are items of nigh equal power and beyond that may have as well. I'll be careful, Naruto said seriously. Believe it. Thor scratched his head in confusion, but smiled at the young blonde anyway. Interesting as thou art, time has grown short, my young friend. Are you ready? Naruto paused. His mind raced. Things will never be the same after this, he thought. I'm never going to be normal, never going to be accepted after this. There's a good chance the villagers might hate me even more after this, but I don't care. I don't understand what exactly is going on, but I gotta get back to help Sasuke and Sakura. And if Thor says I'll become as strong as him someday, then that's good enough for me. I'll show them all that I'm not a demon, and I'll protect Konoha, no matter what. Let's do it. You have a stout heart, little one, Thor smiled and placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder. I know this decision was not an easy one to make, even when it has already been made for you. Always know that all the might and power of Asgard will be with you. Honor Mjolnir and know, no matter what may happen, that you are worthy of the mantle of Thor. I'll remember, Naruto smiled. Hold out your hand, Naruto, Thor said, and raised Mjolnir into the air. Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. Wield it with honor, Naruto, Thor said, and handed Naruto the hammer. Naruto stared at the hammer for a moment. An electric hum, starting at his fingers, raced down his arm and filled his body. Naruto felt a new calm swell over him, the prelude to the new power he was about to claim. Naruto tightened his grip on the hammer's handle and raised it into the air. The bolt of lightning enveloped him, and the world turned white. The boom of thunder shook the forest of death, and Naruto stood up on the lake bottom. However, the lake was gone, the lightning had evaporated every trace of water there was. All that was left was a single fish, flopping around on the muddy ground, and a few specks of plant life here and there. Naruto took a deep breath and looked around the forest, taking in the sights, sounds, and smells with his new senses. He could see flowers opening their petals on the other side of the lake, he could smell their aroma as easily as if he was holding them in his hand, and, lastly, he could hear Sakura's screams from miles away. Naruto reached down and picked Mjolnir up off the ground. He stared at the hammer and tossed it gently from hand to hand. Naruto gave the hammer a few test swings, gauging the weight, and surprised himself with the ease and familiarity he handled the hammer. Thor was right about having all of his memories, Naruto thought. It feels like I've used this hammer my whole life. But I'll have to figure the memory part out later, right now, it's time to give these new abilities a little test drive, Naruto style. Naruto slipped Mjolnir's leather thong around his wrist and whirled it over his head. The hammer blurred and, when Naruto flung it forward, both the hammer and thrower took off through the air. Sakura panted heavily, her sweaty hair clung to her forehead, matted with blood, her left eye was swollen shut, and blood dripped from multiple cuts on her face, arms, and from a deep wound on her side, where the sound genin dressed like a mummy, hit her with a shuriken. This is bad, she thought in a near panic. Those sound nin are too strong to just be any normal genin. They powered right through all my traps, that one dressed like a mummy beat up Lee, and he beat Sasuke-kun. There's no way I can take them all at once. I'll have to wait until the rest of Lee's team comes looking for him for help. Sakura jumped back as Dosu, the bandaged wrapped genin, leapt at her and swung his strange melody arm at her. Even though she dodged the punch, the melody arm sent sound vibrations through the air, and Sakura immediately lost her balance and felt nauseous. She fell to her knees and fought the urge to empty her stomach. For the first time in hours, Sakura was glad she hadn't eaten all day. You saw what my arm did to that spandex-wearing fool, and you still tried to dodge my attack. Dosu sneered. My melody arm will turn your insides into mush even faster than a punch would. Get her now, Kin. The girl on the team took aim and hurled a trio of senbon needles at Sakura. Sakura recovered and ducked at the last second. The needles landed harmlessly in the grass behind her. Ah. Missed me. That's why I'm awesome and what you deserve for being so drab and ugly. There's a reason why Sasuke-kun wants me and no one else. Sakura smirked at the girl and drew a kunai before standing up. Just as she got to her feet, Sakura's vision began to distort and swirl. She stepped forward, only to wobble off balance and fell back to one knee. Sakura dropped her kunai and held her head, blinking rapidly. In front of her, there were suddenly 5 sound girls instead of only 1. What's wrong, Pinky? Something out of whack with your vision? Kin asked, her words dripping with venom. This is only the first part of my jinjutsu. In sound, this isn't even considered an attack, it's used for training academy-level students on sensory impairment. Now this, on the other hand, is an attack. Kin tugged on the ninja wire attached to her second senbon needle. A tiny bell twinkled with a tug, but to Sakura, it sounded like someone had struck a massive gong inside her head. The sound was brutally loud. Sakura fell face first to the ground, grabbed the sides of her head, and screamed. Sakura never heard herself scream, but it echoed through the forest and sent chills up the spines of the genin within earshot. Kin rolled her eyes as she stopped tugging on the ninja wire. Sakura rolled on the ground, sobbing and panting. Kin walked over and pushed Sakura onto her back with her toe. You really are pathetic, the sound girl said. My third bell would have driven you insane, turned you into a brain-fried waste of space. You wouldn't be good even for being a breeding dumpster. Lucky for you, you aren't worth using the chakra. Kin reached into her pouch and pulled out another trio of senbon. She held them in a tight fist, the razor-sharp needles stuck out like claws between her knuckles. Kin pulled Sakura up by her long hair and aimed the senbon at her throat. Sakura feebly tried to free herself, but lacked the strength to break Kin's grip on her hair. She didn't even have the strength to grab a kunai or shuriken out of her pack and cut her way out. She stared up at Kin and at the tips of the senbon and let out a pitiful whimper. Kin's hand wavered and trembled. It's her or me, she told herself. Zaku and Dosu will tell Lord Orochimaru if I don't kill her like we were told. Come on girl, everyone has to make their first kill sometime. Hurry up Kin, Dosu growled. We still have to kill the Uchiha and finish this ridiculous exam. Yeah, Kin, Zaku sneered. If you aren't going to kill her, at least let me have some fun with her before she gets too bloody. He looked at Sakura and leered, undressing her with his dark eyes. Sakura flinched and tried to struggle away from Kin. Zaku took a step towards them, and Sakura let out a feeble scream. You will not touch Sakura-chan, Lee muttered as he struggled to get to his feet. Shut up. Dosu yelled and knocked Lee back down with a backhand. Kin grit her teeth and glared at Zaku, tempted to unleash a wave of holy fury upon him in the name of all womankind. But Zaku was stronger than she was, and attacking him would only turn his perverted attentions toward her, and, after hearing of Zaku's appetites and sound, Kin was terrified of the possibility. I'm doing you a kindness, girl. Death will be a lot more pleasant than what Zaku has in mind for you. Kin tightened her grip on Sakura's hair, took aim, and drew her hand back. The trio of senbon gleamed in the sunlight. Sakura looked away and closed her eyes tightly. Sorry Pinky, Kin whispered and thrust her hand forward. Oh, no, you don't. Screamed Ino as she crashed into the clearing. She kicked Kin across the chin in a picture-perfect leaping kick that no one who knew Ino ever thought she was capable of doing. Kin flew backwards, dropping Sakura's hair and her senbon, and landed several feet away. Toji and Shikamaru burst out of the forest behind Ino. Shikamaru glanced across the clearing, taking in as much information as he could, already forming strategies, while Choji popped a food pill in his mouth. Looks like we jumped in just in time, Shikamaru said. Are you alright Sakura? Sakura looked up and nodded weakly towards Shikamaru. The pineapple-haired boy repressed a shudder. She's a wreck and not just physically. What the hell did these guys do to her, he wondered. Get the girl, Ino. Choji and I will take care of these guys. You got it, Shika, Ino growled and flashed through several hand signs. Across the clearing, Dosu and Zaku looked at each other and laughed. What is it with these leaf genin? Zaku asked. By cockroaches, Dosu sneered. Each one as weak as the next, Zaku finished. You take the one with funny hair and leave the girl for Kin. I'll take Fatso. Shikamaru, Ino, and even Sakura inhaled sharply. A dangerous quiet filled the clearing as they looked at Choji. What? Did you call me? The Akimichi asked. Fatso? Choji's fist started to shake and the ground beneath him cracked and broke. Call me Fatso just one more time. Fat. I'm not fat. Choji roared and charged at Zaku. Human meat tank. Choji's body tripled in size as he became a massive ball of rotating muscle and flesh. He barreled at Zaku and nearly squashed the sound genin before he could jump aside. Choji spun into a tree and came around again, charging recklessly at Zaku. Zaku grit his teeth and held his ground. Decapitating airwaves. Zaku yelled and thrust his hands out at Choji. Columns of wind fired from the holes in Zaku's palms and crashed into Choji. For a moment, the power of Zaku's wind fought against the force of Choji's anger, and the two forces held in a stalemate. Choji let out a muffled roar as he spun faster against the wind and ground his way forward. A brace of kunai appeared across Choji's body, the spikes acting like cleats to increase traction and lethality of his attack. This isn't possible, Zaku panicked. How can he be stronger than my attacks? I will not lose to this fat tub of piss. Zaku growled and channeled more chakra into his arms. His attack doubled in size and pushed Choji back again. Choji dug deeper and continued to grind forward. Zaku's arms began to waver in exhaustion, and he cancelled his jutsu and leapt out of the way just before Choji barreled past. Choji rolled into the tree line, using the tree trucks like a ramp to change direction, and hurtled back toward Zaku. Zaku cursed under his breath and tried to jump away again, but couldn't move. He looked down at his feet and saw a long black shadow attached to his own. Shadow possession jutsu successful, smiled Shikamaru, flatten him, Choji. Zaku trembled as he watched the spiked ball of Akimichi whirl towards him. He struggled against the Nara's famous trap, but it was no use. You shouldn't have forgotten about me. Dosu snarled as he charged at Choji. He leapt to Choji's side, away from the rows of kunai spikes, and whipped his melody arm at the boy. Air waves and vibrations assaulted Choji, made worse by the spinning of his human meat tank jutsu. Choji spun out of control and headed straight for Shikamaru. You gotta be kidding me, Shikamaru complained as he cancelled his containment jutsu and leapt out of the way. Choji crashed into a massive tree, a small explosion of wood splinters and dirt erupting outward, knocking himself out and trapping Shikamaru in the rubble. Thanks Dosu, Zaku said as he picked himself up. That shadow jutsu is a royal pain in the ass. You got sloppy, Dosu growled. I won't save you next time. Whatever. What should we do with them? Zaku asked and gestured toward Choji and Shikamaru. I say we make them pay for interfering. And you know I like em big, Dosu sneered, a sick and perverted gleam in his visible eye. I still get the pink one then, maybe the blonde too, smiled Zaku. Maybe Kin would like to play with Inara. I hear they are naturally submissive to women, even a girl as weak as Kin would completely dominate this one. If you two are done with this perverted and blatant homoerotic male bonding, I suggest you pay attention to me, Kin said. She stood in front of Ino and Sakura with her own senbon needles at her throat. Kin, what the hell are you doing? Zaku asked. Get away from my treats and claim yours before I kill him out of boredom. You will not touch me, Sakura, or either of my teammates, you sick bastard. Kin roared and threw the senbon at Zaku. Zaku dodged them and pointed one of his hands at Kin. What the hell has gotten into you, Kin? That's not Kin, Dosu whispered. Look. Zaku craned his neck to the side and saw the blonde behind Kin slump to the ground with her eyes closed. Zaku smiled. Ah, the all Yamanaka mind walk. Well, then I guess I have to surrender or else you'll kill my precious teammate, right? Who's a smart boy? Ino said through Kin. Just leave and I'll release her once we're safe. Okay. And, just so we're clear, what will happen if we don't? Asked Zaku. Then your teammate dies, painfully. A fresh handful of senbon appeared in Kin's hand and tickled the underside of her chin. Sounds good to me. Zaku laughed and fired a column of air at Kin. Kin's eyes closed and snapped open as Ino cut off her jutsu and returned to her own body, leaving Kin in the way of the blast of wind. The column hit Kin in the chest and knocked her into the air, slamming her into the trees. She landed amongst the tree roots, her back twisted at an unhealthy and unnatural angle. What are you doing? Shouted Ino. She was your teammate. She was a weakling and a loose end, Zaku said as he walked toward Ino. Terrified and shocked, Ino drew a kunai and swung wildly at Zaku. He dodged her first swipe easily and caught her by the wrist. In sound, there is no room for weakness, he said and twisted Ino's wrist. She screamed as it broke and the kunai fell from her hand. Zaku slapped her hard, knocking her down. Only the strong survive and he knelt down over her and began groping Ino's waist and chest. To the victor goes the spoils. Ino struggled, but she was unable to break Zaku's hold on her. She cast a panicked look at her teammates, but they both remained unconscious. Ino even looked at Sakura for help, but the girl was in no condition to do anything. Suddenly, a kunai buried itself in the ground between Zaku's probing hand and Ino, drawing a thin line of blood on Zaku's hand. "Who threw that?" Zaku roared as he whirled around. "Who threw that?" "I did," a low voice whispered from the darkness of the tent Sakura had set up earlier. Sasuke stepped out of the tent, wreathed in shadow, and walked toward the others. "Sasuke-kun," Ino muttered. "Be careful. They're both so strong." "That doesn't matter, Ino pig," Sakura thought, a smile cracking her swollen and bloody face. "My Sasuke-kun is going to save me, just like I saved him. It's perfect." "It looks like there is some sort of party going on out here," Sasuke said. His voice was deeper than usual, with a sinister laughter beneath it. "But a party isn't a party until the guest of honor arrives, and an Uchiha is always the guest of honor." "What are you doing? You're supposed to be out cold for hours, we were told you'd still be out." Zaku shouted, panic sneaking into his voice. "Sorry to disappoint you," Sasuke growled and the cursed seal on his neck began to spread. Like flames, the mark raced across Sasuke's left side, down his arm and leg, and across his face. Even Sasuke's eyes were affected, the corrupted chakra turned his sclera black, making his Sharingan blaze like a fire in the night. "It makes no difference whether he's awake or asleep," Dosu snapped. "He's going to die." He leapt at Sasuke, swinging his melody gauntlet at the Uchiha. Sasuke stood still and smiled as the gauntlet passed straight through him. "Damn, he's just an illusion." Dosu cursed. "Where is he?" "Behind you," Sasuke whispered into Dosu's ear and snaked his arm around the Sound Genin's neck in a classic chokehold. A quick squeeze of corrupted chakra-fueled muscle and Dosu collapsed. Sasuke dropped Dosu carelessly and turned towards Zaku. "Now for you. You dirty Uchiha. I'll kill you and Orochimaru will reward me with whatever I want." Zaku yelled and threw his hands forward. Extreme decapitating airwaves. An enormous rush of air shot out of Zaku's arms, blasting away the ground in front of him. The airwaves rushed at Sasuke, but the Uchiha merely smirked and flashed through hand seals, ending on Tiger. "Fire style. Great fireball jutsu." Sasuke smiled and exhaled. An enormous fireball, larger than any Sasuke had ever created before, launched at Zaku and met the expanding field of supersonic air. Sasuke's fireball swallowed up the rush of air and instantly tripled in size. "What? That's impossible!" screamed Zaku as the fireball rushed towards him. He leapt away just in time, the fireball burning the soles of his feet and the hairs off the back of his neck. He landed awkwardly and rolled on the ground to put out the tiny fires on his feet and legs. When he stood up, Sasuke was nowhere to be found. "I'm surprised you used a wind technique against an Uchiha," Sasuke's voice whispered across the clearing. "After all, my clan was famous for using fire techniques and wind fuels fire." Sasuke appeared in a blur behind Zaku and kicked Zaku in the back of the knee. Zaku stumbled forward, arms flailing, and he was about to hit the ground when he stopped. Zaku felt pressure on his arms, shoulders, and back. He craned his neck around and saw Sasuke behind him, a foot in his back, and his arms twisted unnaturally. "You must be very proud of these arms," Sasuke sneered, "to try and use them against an elite shinobi like me." Sasuke twisted Zaku's left arm roughly, and Zaku screamed. "Even I have to admit, these arms are impressive," Sasuke continued. "Perhaps I'll keep one as a souvenir." Another twist and Zaku's left arm dislocated and broke in several places. Sasuke kicked Zaku away and turned towards Sakura and Ino. "Something's wrong," Ino thought as she cradled her wrist to her body. "What's happened to you, Sasuke-kun?" "Hello girls," Sasuke grinned as he approached. "You don't know how glad I am that you're both here. All this excitement has really given me a big appetite." "Sasuke-kun, what happened to you?" asked Ino. "There's no need to be worried, Ino, no need to fear my new power. I finally have the way to avenge my clan and move on. Don't you want to help me revive my clan?" Sasuke asked and reached out to touch Ino. She shrunk away from his touch and his fingers grazed her broken arm. "Sasuke, my arm." Ino wailed and tried to stumble backwards, but Sasuke was too fast. He lashed out and grabbed her by the front of her shirt. He pulled her close to him, ignoring her cries of pain and fear. "What's the matter, Ino? I thought you'd love to be this close to me. Isn't that what you and Sakura always fought about?" Ino cringed and turned her head away from Sasuke's. His breath was foul, and the dark marks continued to spread across his face. Sakura. Ino whispered a plea for help. Sakura struggled to get up but fell back down after only a few inches. "Don't worry about Sakura. I'll have her right after you," Sasuke leered. "Like I said, all that fighting left me with a big appetite." He tightened his grip on Ino's shirt and pulled, ripping the top in two and revealing Ino's pale bra-clad chest. Her short skirt quickly followed. Sasuke's lust-filled eyes widened in their appreciation of Ino's assets, and his hand reached toward her again. "Please someone," Ino whispered and closed her eyes tight. She felt Sasuke's fingertips on her bra, felt the pit in her stomach deepen and repulsion crawl up her spine, and then there was nothing. No unwanted touch, no pawing fingers, no rank breath. Ino opened her eyes just a fraction. Sasuke was still right in front of her, but she no longer held his attention. His black and red eyes were turned skyward. Ino followed his gaze and saw a young man hovering in the air above them. "What the hell?" she muttered, Sasuke in her vulnerable state temporarily forgotten. The figure slowly descended in front of them, his muscular arms crossed over his broad chest. The figure had shaggy, long blonde hair and, while obviously still a young teen, was more muscular than any teen Sasuke had ever seen. He was dressed in dark blue pants, heavy combat boots, and an armored vest. The vest was the same dark blue as the pants and had 4 glowing circles in its center. The massive metal belt was tied around his waist with 2 more glowing circles on its center. A thick stone hammer with a short handle hung from the belt. "Stay thy hand, villain." What kind of sick animal preys on his own comrades and teammates? The stranger asked, his long blonde hair concealing his face. "What is all over your face, Sasuke team? You know who I am and you still dare you interfere in Uchiha business?" Sasuke growled. "Come down here and I'll show you why I am the elite of all shinobi. Elite or not, this shall not stand. You will not lay another finger on Ino or Sakura," the stranger said and held his hammer in front of him. "Uchiha do what they want, besides, they are honored by my affections." Sasuke roared and charged at the stranger. Sasuke reared back and threw a heavy punch to the stranger's face. Sasuke smirked until the stranger's hair blew aside and he saw 6 whisker-like scars on the stranger's face. "Is that all you got, team?" Naruto whispered, completely unaffected by Sasuke's punch. "I put everything I had into that punch," Sasuke thought. Where has Naruto gotten such power? "Take this." Fire style. Great fireball jutsu. Sasuke growled and launched a fireball even larger than the one he fired at Zaku toward Naruto. Naruto sidestepped out of the way and dashed towards Sasuke. He closed the distance in the blink of an eye. Naruto reached out and backhanded Sasuke savagely, launching the corrupted genin across the clearing and into a thick tree trunk. Sasuke let out a single groan of pain before he slumped forward, unconscious. The flame-like marks on his body flared for a heartbeat before receding back into the original 3-tomo seal. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the receded cursed seal, still feeling its evil in the air, before he turned towards Ino. "Ino," he said gently as he knelt down in front of her. Ino scurried back a foot, still terrified and sickened by Sasuke's assault. Naruto reached out and gently touched Ino's good arm. She flinched, but finally focused her eyes on Naruto. "Naruto. It is alright, Ino. Sasuke will not harm you again. Here," he said and held out the tattered remains of his orange jumpsuit. "I am afraid there is very little of my old clothes left, but I feel they will serve better than what remains of your own." Ino suddenly realized her state of undress, blushed brightly, and snatched the clothing out of Naruto's hands. "Naruto. What are you doing? You aren't supposed to look at a girl when she's like this." Naruto blushed as well and turned aside like a proper gentleman. While Ino changed, Naruto checked on his other teammate. "Are you alright, Sakura?" The pin cat looked up at Naruto and squinted through her swollen eyes. "Naruto, you missed it," she whispered. "Sasuke saved me and Ino. He flew in like a shining knight and beat the sound genin like they were nothing. He really does care about me. Why did you have to interrupt?" Poor girl, she's in shock, Naruto thought. She really doesn't know that Sasuke attacked Ino and would have raped Ino and then her. "We need to get your wounds cared for, the others too. I will get you to the tower I saw when I flew here," Naruto said. Ino returned, now dressed in the top of Naruto's old jumpsuit. The jacket covered her arms and body, but left her legs bare. Naruto had to catch himself from staring too much, reminding himself that she had just escaped a truly horrific experience. She quickly rushed to her teammates and began to check over them. Shikamaru suffered from a broken rib and dislocated shoulder, while Choji suffered from a concussion. Off to the side, Lee was covered in bruises and was ing painfully. Ino tried to help them as much as she could half-naked and with her own injuries. Naruto walked towards Sakura. The beaten girl had crawled across the clearing and draped herself over Sasuke's unconscious body. "Sasuke-kun. Wake up, Sasuke-kun. It's alright, I won't let Naruto Baka attack you like that again," she whispered. "I'm going to take care of you once we get back to the village." "Sakura, are you alright?" Naruto asked. "Leave us alone, Naruto Baka." Sakura yelled with a strength that betrayed her injuries. "Haven't you done enough damage for one day?" Naruto frowned at the girl's accusations before he walked back towards Ino and the others. "How are they?" he asked her. "They'll be okay, but we got to get out of here. I don't suppose you have some scrolls to go with those new muscles and hammer. What happened to you anyway? That is a tale for another time. I'm sure the Hokage will require answers as well, and I would rather only have to explain once. Now brace yourself, I've never tried this before. Before Ino could protest, Naruto lifted his hammer and whirled it over his head. Lightning sparked from Mjolnir until it was nothing but a glowing blur spinning over Naruto's head. Naruto slammed the hammer down on the ground and the world vanished in white light. Training ground number 44 Central Tower. Ino collapsed to her knees and vomited what little remained in her stomach. For the first time in days, she was glad she hadn't eaten more than a few ration bars and soldier pills since the second part of the exam started. She shook her head and looked around. The forest was gone and she was lying on a wooden floor inside a large room. Naruto was standing over her, smoke drifting off his hammer. Choji, Lee, Shikamaru, Sakura and Sasuke were lying on the floor around the room, all still injured and as sick as she was. What's going on? How did we get here? She wondered. She burped slightly, making a face at the revolting taste in her mouth. Sorry about that, Naruto grinned sheepishly. The memories never mentioned anything about motion sickness. What memories? How did you do that? Ino demanded to know. Naruto looked away from Ino, as if he was going to pull the answer out of thin air. She scowled at him with her most serious and mean face, but Naruto continued to scratch his head and pretend not to notice her. Ino was about to bash the fellow blonde on the head when the door slammed open. What's going on in here? Iruka asked as he burst into the room. Naruto. What happened to you? How did you all sneak in here without using the scrolls? You're all going to get disqualified from the exams. Calm down Iruka-sensei, Naruto said, waving his hands at the Chunin. I'll take care of the scrolls, Ino will explain what's going on. Naruto waved Mjolnir in the air again and disappeared in a bolt of lightning. Iruka's jaw dropped and threatened to hit the floor. What how Naruto? Yeah, I don't have an answer for that one yet either, Ino said sarcastically and carefully shifted her broken arm. Do you think you could call for a medical nin while we talk, Iruka-sensei? We're all pretty hurt here and it's a long story. Oh, of course Ino, Iruka stammered as he snapped back to reality and called for a medic. 5 minutes later. An entire team of medical nin hustled around the room, working on Team 7 and Team 10. Iruka paced back and forth, trying to help the medics, but mostly just getting in their way. Ino laid back on a makeshift cot, her arm in a sling, and Naruto's old jumpsuit still wrapped around her body. Her eyes were heavy from the pain medication the medics gave her and the others, her vision was glossy, and everything had a pleasant haze about it. When Naruto reappeared in a bolt of white lightning, all Ino did was smile. Everyone else jumped back 10 feet. Hey Naruto, Ino smiled and gave a droopy wave. Feeling better Ino-chan? Naruto asked. Ino gave him a thumbs up before relaxing deeper into the cot. Alright Naruto, enough is enough, Iruka scolded. You better stop scaring hell out of everyone, popping in and out of the place with bolts of lightning and swinging around a giant hammer, and start explaining. I would like to know as well, the Sandaime Hokage here is in Sarutobi, said as he stepped into the room. Beneath his massive hat, the Hokage smoked his pipe and smiled curiously at Naruto's new form. It seems that this year's Chunin exams have been more exciting than usual. What happened to everyone? And what happened to you Naruto? I figured you would show up, old man, Naruto nodded and tossed 4 scrolls to Iruka. Give these to Ino's team and to Lee's when they get here. That should clear them for the next part of the exams. Where did you get these scrolls? Iruka asked as he caught the scrolls. The rain ninja about 2 miles from here carried them, Naruto said. I beat them and took them. How else would I get scrolls for everybody? Iruka looked at Naruto like he had just sprouted a second head from his neck. You left the tower, beat a squad of rain ninja that had already taken out at least 3 other teams and gotten their scrolls, took those scrolls and got back here in only 5 minutes. Well I would have been back sooner, but it took me a minute to find them, Naruto said with a grin. Tell Sakura and Sasuke team I'm hanging on to ours. Lead the way old man. So you're this Thor person now? Sarutobi asked, his voice heavy with skepticism. It had taken Naruto nearly 10 minutes to tell the Hokage his story after the third body flickered them to his office. Sort of. I'm still Naruto, I just have all of Thor's memories and will slowly gain all his abilities as I train and grow up, Naruto explained. He rubbed the back of his head and shrugged. It's all kinda confusing. Sarutobi sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose, he could already feel the migraine approaching. Naruto, this is not the time for one of your pranks. Now drop the transformation jutsu and tell me what happened out there and how you created all that lightning. This is no prank, old man, Naruto protested. This isn't a transformation, and I really found Mjolnir in the Forest of Death after Orochimaru team attack us. Shouldn't you be more worried about him right now? That is enough Naruto. Stop fooling around and making up wild stories. The Hokage shouted and slammed his hand onto his desk. Our intelligence forces would have heard if Orochimaru was within 50 miles of Konoha. I need to know what happened to Sasuke and the others, not hear some made-up story about a little hammer and ancient mythical gods. I am telling you the truth, Naruto growled. Tiny bolts of lightning cackled across Mjolnir's surface as Naruto struggled to control his emotions at the Hokage's unintentional insults to Mjolnir and his new powers. If you aren't going to believe me, I need to get back and make sure the others are okay. Naruto turned to leave and was nearly knocked over by Anko as she stormed into the Hokage's office. Hokage-sama. Orochimaru has infiltrated the Chunin exams. She shouted breathlessly. Not you too, Sarutobi groaned and collapsed onto his desk. This has gone too far, Naruto. And Anko. I can't believe you would let Naruto put you up to this sort of thing. I know you have a sick sense of humor with all the bloodthirstiness and your creative ways of interrogation, but this is totally unacceptable behavior for a special jonin. Anko looked at the Hokage and then at Naruto. What the hell is he talking about, brat? I told you I wasn't making things up, old man. Sarutobi pinched his nose again, but there was no stopping the migraine. Alright, Anko, please, report. My curse seal tried to activate, and that only happens when Orochimaru team is nearby, explained Anko. I ran into the forest and felt Orochimaru team's chakra pulse. He gave someone else a curse seal like mine. Sasuke. He gave it to Sasuke, Naruto interjected. Yeah, that's what Orochimaru team said. He said the Uchiha is his new prize, that he'll make Sasuke greater than any of the Sannin, he'll have his revenge, blah blah blah. The bastard worm still loves the sound of his own voice. Wait, you actually saw Orochimaru? Sarutobi asked. Saw him, I fought the perverted pedophile, Anko grinned savagely, before she frowned. I almost had him, but he switched himself with a mud clone before I could blow his tiny pecker straight to hell. Sarutobi let out a heavy sigh and pulled a bottle of sake out of his desk. He poured a healthy amount into a glass and downed it in a single gulp. So he's really back. Naruto, go back to the tower and tell Iruka that the rest of the exams are postponed indefinitely. Anko, alert every Anbu, Jonin, and special Jonin in the village. Tell them to get into the forest with a fine-toothed comb until they find my wayward student. I can't, Hokage-sama, Anko said, looking away from the Hokage. The bastard gave me a message for you. He said that if we cancel the exams, if they aren't finished according to schedule, Orochimaru said he would. Anko stopped, her clenched fist shaking at her sides. What did he say, Anko? Sarutobi asked. I need to know his exact words. He said he'd kill every civilian and ninja in Konoha, and that he'd use the Kunoichi for his experiments, okay? Anko shouted and grabbed the seal on her neck. He said I would have to watch until I was the last one left, she whispered. I'm sorry Anko, Sarutobi said. I know your former sensei is a very sensitive subject for you, and I didn't mean to push. Go back to the forest with Nico's Anbu cell, see if you can find any trace of Orochimaru and watch over any of the teams still in the forest. Orochimaru isn't the type to only have one plan. He may be after Sasuke, but I'm sure he has other reasons for coming back to Konoha. Yes sir, Anko nodded and looked at Naruto. So what happened to you? Looks like puberty ran you over like a freight train. Nice hammer though, brat. Wardrobe still sucks, but at least you found a nice new toy. All you need now is someone to nail. She licked her lips before she flickered away with a snake-like hiss and a swirl of green leaves. Naruto looked at Sarutobi for an explanation, but the Hokage simply smiled and shook his head. There is no explaining her, my boy. Any ninja worth his or her salt is bound to become a bit eccentric over time. We all have our ways to cope with a life. Like keeping a stash of porn in the bottom left drawer of your desk, grinned Naruto. Like keeping a stash of ahem, I have no idea what you're speaking of, Sarutobi coughed before straightening himself out behind the desk and narrowed his eyes. Going back to Hokage mode, Naruto called it. Return to the tower Naruto, the exams will have to continue as scheduled. Keep an eye on the others until the next stage of the exams in 2 days. We'll finish our discussion about your new abilities after the next stage. Whatever you say, old man, Naruto said and pulled his hammer out of his belt. He swung it overhead and slammed it onto the office floor. Naruto vanished in a bolt of lightning, leaving the Hokage amazed until he spotted the smoldering burn mark on his office floor. Naruto. Naruto smirked as he walked back through the central tower. He could almost hear the Hokage's wail even from the forest of death. New body, new hammer, new powers, and I can still terrorize the old man like it's my job, Naruto smirked as he walked. He headed toward the room where he had left Ino and the others, but it was empty. He continued around the tower until he heard footsteps approaching behind him. Naruto turned around, hoping to get some information on where everyone had disappeared to. When Sasuke appeared on the other end of the hallway, Naruto slumped and leaned against the hallway wall. I'm surprised to see you're awake, Sasuke team, Naruto greeted. I figured you'd be out from the chakra exhaustion for at least another half a day. HMMPH, Sasuke grunted in return. What happened to you, idiot? You look like a girl with that long hair. Still looks better than a duck's ass sticking out the back of my head, Naruto smirked. You know, you should get that snake hickey looked at. What you did back in the forest was horrific. What did I do? Sasuke smirked. I really don't remember, my memory of the entire forest is a complete blank. With a growl befitting an angry frost giant, Naruto sprang off the wall and got right in Sasuke's face. He grabbed the front of Sasuke's shirt, picked the teen off the ground, and slammed Sasuke against the wall. Listen, thou stain of Niflheim excrement, Naruto snarled, Thor's influence coming out as Naruto grew angrier. I know you know what happened back there. And I know that it wasn't just Orochimaru's curse seal influencing you. Deep down, you took sick enjoyment in what you were doing. And what if I did? Sasuke snapped back, his Sharingan whirling. For years those girls hounded my every step, practically begging for me to take them. And when it happens, they pretend not to enjoy it. The cursed seal of heaven on Sasuke's neck stirred and began to slowly spread across Sasuke's neck and back. Naruto's nose wrinkled at the smell of the corrupt chakra. He spun Sasuke off the wall and dropped him to the floor. Sasuke struggled, but Naruto was too strong. Naruto held him down with one hand and drew Mjolnir with the other. I should scatter your vile thoughts across this floor for speaking thus, Naruto growled. Sasuke stared up at Naruto, his Sharingan spinning, trying to influence Naruto not to smash his face into mush. Those eyes of yours won't work on me, worm, Naruto said. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Naruto lowered Mjolnir and let go of Sasuke. We're still teammates, so I will let you go with a single warning. Do not go near Ino or Sakura ever again. Do not look at them. Do not speak to them. If I find out you ever raise your voice at them or lay a finger on them again or even give them a questionable look, I will end you. Naruto straightened his armored vest and turned to walk away, continued to try and find Ino and the others. This isn't over, idiot, Sasuke growled from the floor. This power, my revenge, the girls, it will all be mine, and there isn't a damn thing you or anyone else can do about it. Naruto froze, his fist tightening around Mjolnir's handle, and turned back. His normally cool blue eyes darkened like the sea during a storm, and a tendril of lightning sparked off his shoulder and into the hallway wall. Sasuke took an involuntary scoot backwards. Don't try my patience and hold no illusions. If I didn't need you alive for the rest of the exams, I would smite thee into a pile of ash, Naruto said before his eyes lightened and the lightning ceased. But don't think you will not be punished. Naruto flipped Mjolnir in the air casually as Sasuke stood up to face him. Once Sasuke was up on his feet, Naruto threw Mjolnir lightly at Sasuke. The hammer hit Sasuke in the chest and knocked him back onto the ground. Sasuke struggled and flared his chakra, both his own and the cursed seal's, but he couldn't budge the enchanted hammer. Get this thing off of me. He shouted beneath the mystical weight. I think a little time out would do you good, Naruto said with a wide, almost fox-like grin. I'll come back in a few hours, after I've seen how Ino and the others are doing. Maybe by then, you won't be such a pain in the ass. Naruto gave Sasuke a little wave before turning on his heel and walking away, smiling while Sasuke shouted and cursed behind him. The next 2 days passed quickly for the teams inside the central tower. Given a reprieve from the Chunin exams, teams were given personal quarters to wash, eat, and rest until the second exam deadline, and the exams could continue. Genin teams came and went about the tower, talking to allies and comrades, avoiding the competition as much as possible. Those genin that didn't have the required scrolls were healed and escorted out of the forest, their exam was over. Medical ninjas shuffled back and forth between the different quarters, healing and restoring the genin as much as they could. Those that were too badly injured to continue were given a choice. Withdrawal from the exams or continue at less than 100%. Aside from healing the wounded and restoring those with chakra exhaustion, the medical ninja carried gossip between quarters, casually informing other competitors about the going on of their competitors, but never giving away too much information. Finally, as the exam deadline passed, a voice echoed through the tower's speaker system. All genin proceed to the basement for the final stage of the preliminary Chunin exams. Naruto stood in the doorway of his room, shadowed by the dark. None of the other competitors or even his teammates saw him as they walked by, which was the way Naruto wanted it. His last encounter with his team had left Naruto feeling more alone than ever. Naruto flipped Mjolnir in the air casually as Sasuke stood up to face him. Once Sasuke was up on his feet, Naruto threw Mjolnir lightly at Sasuke. The hammer hit Sasuke in the chest and knocked him back onto the ground. Sasuke struggled and flared his chakra, both his own and the cursed seal's, but he couldn't budge the enchanted hammer. Get this thing off of me. He shouted beneath the mystical weight. I think a little time out would do you good, Naruto said with a wide, almost fox-like grin. I'll come back in a few hours, after I've seen how Ino and the others are doing. Maybe by then, you won't be such a pain in the ass. Naruto gave Sasuke a little wave before turning on his heel and walking away, smiling while Sasuke shouted and cursed behind him. Naruto walked down the hall, his boots made small echoes on the floor, and he stopped in front of Team 7's assigned quarters. He opened the door silently and stepped into the room. There were 3 beds and a tray of food inside. The food was untouched, and only one of the beds was occupied. Sakura dozed beneath a thin sheet on one of the beds, tossing and turning fitfully. A floorboard squeaked as Naruto walked toward one of the empty beds, and Sakura's eyes snapped open. "Sasuke-kun, is that you?" she asked and sat up. The thin sheet covering her fell away, her face and body were wrapped in heavy white bandages. The sight filled Naruto with regret, repulsion, and rage. "It's just me, Sakura," Naruto answered softly. "Naruto, where am I? Where's Sasuke-kun?" Sakura asked. She tried to step out of bed, but her injuries cried out in pain, and she fell back into bed. "Take it easy, Sakura," Naruto said as he rushed to her bedside. "You're in pretty bad shape. Those sound ninja beat you and the others pretty bad before I got there. You're recovering in the forest central tower. We've got a few days before the Chunin exams continue." "The sound ninja, I remember them, they were so horrible and strong. But where's Sasuke-kun, Naruto? Is he alright? I want to see him." "Geez, you have a one-track mind. Sasuke's here in the tower. He's fine, physically at least. He's taking a time out right now. I want to see him," Sakura insisted and tried to get out of bed again. "In the forest, he saved us." "You don't remember anything else, Sakura. You don't remember what else Sasuke did in the forest to Ino, what he wanted to do to you. What are you talking about?" "Sakura, Sasuke tried to rape Ino, he hurt her. He was going to do the same thing to you." Sakura stared at Naruto, her mouth open and slack, her breath coming in deep panicked gulps. "I can't believe it." "Yeah, it's pretty bad," Naruto whispered and rubbed the back of his head. He really didn't know what to do, comforting distraught girls wasn't exactly Naruto's forte. He reached out and touched her shoulder, but Sakura flinched away from him. "I can't believe you'd make up something like that. How dare you badmouth Sasuke like that? I can't believe you'd invent these terrible lies to make yourself look better." Sakura snapped and tried to slap Naruto across the cheek. Her injury stopped her and she fell back into bed, whimpering in pain. "What are you talking about?" Naruto asked, taken back by Sakura's sudden fury. "Sasuke-kun saved us and all you did was show up late and get in the way. I swear, if you've ruined Sasuke-kun's chances at becoming a Chunin, I'll pummel you into next year." Naruto stared at Sakura, completely flabbergasted. "I can't believe you'd still defend him even now." "Ah. I'll always be at Sasuke-kun's side. And when he becomes a Chunin, I'll be the one that helps him revive his clan and take down his brother. And not you or Ino or anyone is going to stop me," Sakura yelled. Sparks of lightning twitched off Naruto's knuckles as his fist shook. "Thou art the most foolish whelp of a girl in all the 9 realms," he growled and stomped away from the bed. He flung open the door and nearly crashed into Kakashi, who had his hand raised to knock on the door. "Yo," he said and I smiled. "Just the 2 I was looking for. How are you feeling, Sakura?" "Fine," growled Sakura through tightly clenched teeth. "That's good. Naruto, can I borrow you for a moment?" Kakashi asked. Naruto cast one last glance at the smoldering Sakura and nodded, brushing past Kakashi on his way out. The one-eyed Jonin waved goodbye to Sakura and followed Naruto down the hall. "Naruto, where are you going?" "Back into the forest, it's friendlier there," the blonde growled. "Perhaps I can find a pair of rabid wolves to be my new teammates." "Yes, about the forest. I wanted to ask you what happened to you all out there. I've heard some pretty ridiculous stories and I couldn't understand Sasuke beneath that hammer. I wonder where that came from anyway." "It's mine. Changed a little bit in the last few days, if you haven't noticed," Naruto muttered. Did you do something with your hair?" Kakashi asked. Naruto rolled his eyes and stopped in his tracks. "Okay, enough with the cryptic. We entered the forest, fought a grass ninja that was really Orochimaru in disguise. I nearly got ate by a giant snake. Orochimaru hit me with some purple fire jutsu that messed up my chakra a lot, then he bit Sasuke and gave him some crazy hickey. I nearly died again. I found a mystical hammer and gained the powers and memories of the god of thunder. Sakura got messed up by a bunch of sound genin. Sasuke went nuts, he tried to rape Ino, and would have raped Sakura too. I stopped him and I brought everyone back here. There, whole story. Happy?" "Sasuke would never rape anyone," Kakashi shook his head and waved off Naruto's comments. "You said Orochimaru bit him. Well, he obviously must have done something to Sasuke's mind to make him temporarily insane or something." "I know what I saw, Kakashi-sensei," Naruto growled. "And I know what I heard from that bastard's own mouth. There is nothing temporary about this. He's lucky all I did was put him in timeout." "Oh, so that's your hammer pinning Sasuke to the ground?" Kakashi asked with an amused tone. How did you manage to move that thing? Did you just hinge something small into that hammer because even I couldn't lift it even after enhancing my muscles with chakra? Is there anything else you needed, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked bluntly. The conversation with Kakashi had just added to the bitter taste left in his mouth from Sakura's accusations. Naruto wanted to get as far away from his team as the Chunin exam rules allowed. Well, since it is your hammer or whatever, would you mind removing it from Sasuke? I need to have him examined by a specialist if he was really attacked by Orochimaru. What about Sakura? She had a much harder time of it than Sasuke did. What about me? I nearly got killed and you haven't even batted an eye out of concern for me. Naruto shouted. Please Naruto, people in this hallway are trying to rest. Clearly, you're over-exaggerating because you're standing here without a single scratch on you, and Sakura has already been treated by the finest medical ninja in Konoha. There isn't anything I could do for her that already hasn't been done. But no one knew that Orochimaru attacked Sasuke like that. It could have dire consequences for not only Sasuke, but for the whole village as well. Yeah, the council would be furious if they lost their precious last Uchiha. Now you're just sounding jealous and immature, Naruto, Kakashi scolded. Why don't you go get something to eat and relax a little before the rest of the exams? I expect my entire time to continue advancing. Naruto rolled his eyes, turned, and started walking away when he heard Kakashi cough. The hammer, Naruto. Naruto sighed and held out his right hand. A second later, a gray blur shot by Kakashi's head, parting his peculiar hair. Naruto held Mjolnir above his head for a moment before he gave Kakashi a smirk and walked away. That must have been one long chakra wire, Kakashi muttered, still in shock. Naruto watched as the last competitor, a dark-skinned genin from Kumo, ran past before he stepped into the hallway. He walked with his shoulders hunched forward and his head down. How come Thor never had to deal with idiot teammates like this? Sure, Hawkeye was an ex-criminal and Iron Man was a miserable drunk, but at least they were still helpful and never tried to screw Thor over, Naruto thought as he entered through a pair of double doors. The basement was a massive underground arena. The far end of the arena was taken up by a pair of massive stone arms and hands crossed in the ram seal. The floor was tiled out of thick hunks of stone, and there was a catwalk and staircase on both sides of the arena. The Hokage, all the Jonin senseis, and the two other proctors stood in front of the statue. Naruto filed in behind the other genin candidates as the Hokage stepped forward. Welcome and congratulations on making it to almost the final round of the Chunin exam. The Hokage smiled. Now, I say almost the final round because we have the honor of having so many exceptional candidates that we need to hold a series of preliminary matches to narrow down the field before the respected dignitaries arrive to observe the final matches. Do you know why the Chunin exams exist? Duh, to figure out who's gonna be promoted to Chunin, Yoroi Akato muttered. Naruto tightened his grip around Mjolnir's handle. Leaf Ninja should have more respect for the Hokage than this. I might call him old man but it's still with the utmost respect. While the exams do allow the various cages a chance to see their ninja forces in action and thus promote those that earned it, the Hokage continued, either not hearing or ignoring Yoroi's comment. The Chunin exams are in reality a simulated war between hidden villages. You are all soldiers, looking to bring further glory for yourself and your hidden village. The 21 candidates all looked slightly shocked and looked at each other. The same thought raced through all their minds. This is a whole new level. The preliminary matches will be as follows, the Hokage began, but was cut off by a pale and sickly-looking Jonin. As referee, may I? He asked politely. The Hokage nodded and stepped back. I am Gekko Hade, I'll be the referee for the preliminary matches, the pale Jonin coughed. Great a judge from the Leaf, that'll be real fair, Kankuro said with an eye roll. I heard that, Hade growled before ruining the intimidation by having a coughing fit. It was some time before he was able to continue. As I was saying, all matches will be called fairly because there is very little to referee. All matches are no jutsu barred, any and all techniques are allowed. Fights are over when a combatant is knocked unconscious, killed, or submits. If the combatant is clearly unable to continue, or his or her life is in danger, I will step in and call the fight. Now before we begin, does anyone have any questions or would like to drop out of the competition now? All the combatants looked at each other, looked for the coward, the chicken wuss, the weakling that was going to back out at the last minute. Only one began to move, Kabuto. His hand slowly began to rise until his Jonin sensei looked up and narrowed his eyes at the teen. Kabuto quickly scratched the back of his head with his raised hand and smiled sheepishly. Heiei looked at the white-haired teen suspiciously for a moment, coughed, and continued. Anko, if you'd please. The scary forest of death proctor stepped forward, reached into her trench coat, and pulled out a small electric remote. With the push of a button, the wall on the far side of the arena split and opened to reveal an enormous television screen. On the screen were the ninja ID photos of each combatant left in the Chunin exams, with a small emblem on the bottom right side of their picture, displaying which hidden village they hail from. Okay, maggots, here's how this is gonna work, Anko smiled like a predator eyeing its prey. You've all been thrown into a random generator to decide the preliminary matchups. When your photo pops up on the screen, it's time to let the blood flow and the good times roll. Anko shouted with glee. The gathered genin gave a collective shudder of fear, while the Hokage gathered leaf jonin rolled their eyes and sighed at Anko's behavior. Anko stopped her giggling long enough to activate the randomizer. 2 boxes appeared on the screen, and participants' photos flashed through the boxes at high speed until it finally stopped on 2 faces. Sasuke Uchiha and Kintsuchi. The first 2 fighters will remain here. Everyone else must watch from the catwalks. Interference in any match, including coaching from any teammate or sensei, will result in all parties being disqualified from the competition. The competitors and instructors nodded, though Kakashi took a split second to look Sasuke in the eye and motion to his neck. A quick reminder that if Sasuke used his chakra and/or activated the cursed seal, Kakashi will step in and stop the match, consequences be damned. As if I'll need any chakra to beat this peasant girl, Sasuke scoffed. As Naruto filed out of the ring area and toward the catwalks with the other combatants, he narrowed his eyes at his teammate, hoping Sasuke would remember his timeout from earlier. He also cast his gaze at Kin. Naruto remembered the girl from the Forest of Death and frowned when he saw her condition. The brunette was still dressed in the same dirty fatigue she wore in the forest and was still sporting a large bruise on her face and head from her own teammate's attack. Naruto looked at her sound teammates, both were just as dirty, leading Naruto to assume they didn't have or lost their change of clothing. The spiky-haired one had one arm in a sling from the beating he took from Sasuke, but the rest of their injuries were mended and they appeared to be in overall good health. Kin looked like she had not slept in days and was suffering from mild chakra exhaustion. Either she just walked into the tower 10 minutes ago, or she got the worst medical treatment I've ever seen, Naruto thought. But before he could get anyone in authority's attention, Hate raised his hand and shouted. Begin. Sasuke didn't waste any time and rushed toward Kin, a flying kick similar to Rock Lee's dynamic entry aimed at her head. Kin ducked beneath Sasuke's foot and countered with a back fist of her own. Sasuke landed and blocked at the last second, his movement slow and casual. He held onto Kin's wrist and sneered at her. It's a real shame you were already out cold in the forest earlier, you would have been a lot of fun, he whispered just loudly enough for her to hear. Kin snarled back at Sasuke and landed a kick to his stomach. The kick lacked the power to do any real damage, but managed to separate the two enough for Kin to hurl a trio of senbon needles at the boy. Sasuke dodged them, cutting it closer than usual. Those little needles are much harder to dodge without using my Sharingan, he realized. I'm almost glad I had that experience back in Wave with that Haku girl, otherwise I may be a pincushion again by now. He reached into his pouch and hurled 4 shuriken at the sound girl. Kin laughed at him and hurled a matching set of senbon. The senbon intercepted the shuriken, slipping into the shuriken's center holes and pinning them to the wall. Sasuke glowered at her and rushed to engage into jutsu again, but Kin leapt backward and darted away. What's the matter, afraid to fight a true elite face to face? Sasuke taunted and continued to rush at Kin. Don't be an ass. You would keep your distance too if you spent the last 2 days being ignored by medics and sleeping on a broken mattress. Kin spat back and hurled more senbons at Sasuke. Not all of us got 4-course meals, full healing, and comfortable beds like you, team. That confirms those suspicions, thought Naruto from the catwalk. Someone definitely rigged these exams to make it easy on the team. Now the only real question is who? A weakling like you doesn't deserve equal treatment as a true noble and elite ninja like me, Sasuke sneered as he channeled chakra into his legs. With a mighty leap, Sasuke flew over the senbon and Kin and landed behind her. In the time it took for Kin to turn, Sasuke had already slammed his right hand into her stomach and followed up with a straight kick to the girl's ribs. Kin skid backwards and leapt away again, clutching her ribs. A small trickle of blood dripped from her mouth. That bastard broke some of my ribs. He's an arrogant Sanofabich, but he's still stronger than most of the others, he hasn't even used his cursed seal yet. Kin reached into her pack and hurled more senbon at Sasuke. Sasuke dodged again, never noticing the chakra strings tied to the needles or the tiny bells that dangled along them. Kin gave the strings a sharp tug and Sasuke collapsed, clutching his ears. After all that bravado and bullshit, you're just as pathetic as that pink-haired banshee you have as a teammate, Kin smirked as she pulled on the chakra strings again. I can't believe this, does no one in the Hidden Leaf have any sensory training or defense? I would have thought the banshee would have at least shared how incredibly painful my attacks can be. Sasuke struggled to stand up, his eyes filled with rage, but each time Kin pulled the strings, Sasuke fell back to his knees and clawed at his ears. You should be happy I went easy on you, Pinky, Kin shouted up toward Sakura. I'm not going to be so kind to your prick of a boyfriend. Kin wrapped the chakra strings together and began flicking her forefinger against it. The violent vibrations increased her attacks tenfold and Sasuke roared in pain. He managed to open his eyes slightly and saw 5 copies of Kin, each holding their own chakra strings, each making their own pain-filled symphony. The chaotic noise was maddening. It took all of Sasuke's willpower to find his kunai pouch and slip a blade into his hand. "Give up already," Kin shouted over the dim. "I don't want to be lynched for killing the least precious last Uchiha." Sasuke smiled despite the pain he was in. "You said it yourself, I'm the last Uchiha. And all Uchiha have something that makes us far superior to everyone else." Sasuke's eyes snapped open, his Sharingan active and whirling at high speeds. "I can see through your Jinjutsu," Sasuke smirked and threw his kunai. Kin's eyes flashed wide as the kunai sped right at her. How could he tell which was the real me? Kin ducked to the left, avoiding the kunai, but never saw the second kunai hidden in the shadow of the first. The kunai sank deep into her shoulder. Kin let out a high-pitched scream and dropped her chakra strings. "Without your bells and strings, your jutsu is worthless." Sasuke stood up and walked towards Kin. The look on his face was eerily similar to a cat stalking an injured mouse. "But my jutsu requires none of your weak tools to beat you," he finished and began to flash through hand seals. "Kakashi-sensei, I thought you told Sasuke not to use any jutsu or even his Sharingan." Sakura practically yelled at Kakashi. The one-eyed Jonin sighed, looked up from his Icha book, and shrugged. "I did, but it looks like he's still in control," Kakashi said. "He won't hurt himself. I don't think that seal on his neck will activate just using one jutsu. And I wouldn't worry about the Sharingan, as in Uchiha, the chakra draw to his eyes is natural, unlike mine, and the chakra drain is practically nothing." Naruto looked at his teacher and teammate with disgust written on his face. Kakashi's apathy was downright criminal, not to mention his tardiness and perverted habits made him hardly a suitable role model or teacher for young kids. Naruto's new memories had shown him what true teachers were. What he wouldn't give for Steve Rogers or Nick Fury's tutelage, even the Taskmaster would be a better teacher than Kakashi, and he was a super villain. His right hand dropped to his side, close to where Mjolnir hung from his belt, just in case Sasuke's cursed seal activated again. "Fire style. Fireball jutsu," Sasuke shouted and a massive orange Kin panicked. Sweat poured from the heat and mixed with the icy feeling of shock coming from her kunai wound. She tried to throw her body out of the way, but the blood loss and wound slowed her down. The fireball slammed into her wounded arm, instantly igniting her clothes and hair. She rolled around on the ground, trying to put the flames out. Heiei quickly intervened. He appeared at Kin's side and doused the flames with a low-level water jutsu. Smoke and steam rose off Kin's body as medics rushed to the scene. "Kintsuchi is unable to continue. Winner. Sasuke Uchiha," Heiei announced. Up on the screen, Kin's portrait darkened while the word winner appeared above Sasuke's. Instead of celebrating, Sasuke fell to one knee, clutching his neck. His body shuddered in pain as he tried to catch his breath and hold off the cursed seal transformation. "Kakashi-sensei." Sakura screamed. Kakashi sighed for a second time, looked up from his book, and finally put it away. "I guess that's my cue," he said casually and leapt down to the arena floor. "Come on, Sasuke. Let's get that taken care of." He reached out, touched Sasuke's good shoulder, and they both disappeared in a swirl of leaves. "Sasuke team should never have been allowed to fight," Naruto growled softly. "I can't believe Kakashi-sensei let him. He knows what's best, Baka, not you." Sakura yelled and tried to slam her fist into the top of Naruto's head like she always did. Unfortunately, Sakura wasn't used to Naruto's change of height and missed the top of his head, clipping his jaw instead. The blow didn't faze Naruto in the slightest, but Sakura felt like she had just broken her hand. "That is the last time you will ever do that to me," Naruto said to her without looking at her. Sakura stepped away in terror at the coldness in Naruto's voice and stared up at the random photos flashing across the screen. The photos finally stopped and Heiei announced the next matchup. "Will Choji Akimichi and Misumi Tsurugi please report to the ring?" Misumi hurtled over the balcony and let himself drop into the ring. Choji calmly finished his potato chips and used the stairs. "Let's go already," Misumi shouted impatiently. "I want to get this over with." "One should never rush while eating good food," Choji replied with a sage-like air of wisdom that only an Akimichi talking about eating could have. He finally finished the chips, turned the bag upside down to get the last few crumbs and seasoning, and tossed the empty bag away. "Now then, let's get this thing started." "Begin," Heiei shouted and Misumi dashed across the ring at a much higher speed than anyone expected. When he closed half the distance to Choji, Misumi held his arms out in front of him and, with a pulse of chakra, shot his hands towards Choji. Choji paled in surprise when Misumi's arms elongated and stretched unbelievable lengths. Choji didn't even realize that they had wrapped completely around his chest and arms until it was too late. Already trapped, Choji tried to struggle as the rest of Miss Yumi caught up to his arms. Miss Yumi's legs stretched just like his arms and wrapped around Choji's waist and legs like fleshy anchors. Miss Yumi even stretched and wrapped his own neck around Choji's, choking him. That's the same technique Orochimaru used to bite Sasuke-kun in the Forest of Death. Sakura realized. She was about to turn to Naruto and saw something, but the fading pain in her hand stopped her. Let the Baka figure it out for himself, her inner self said. Course that'll probably never happen, so we'll make Naruto crawl back to us on his hands and knees and beg us to let him know what's going on. Cha. Unfortunately for Sakura's plans, Naruto was too busy comparing Miss Yumi's soft body technique to Thor's memories of the Elastic Explorer, Mr. Fantastic. Meanwhile, Miss Yumi continued to tighten his hold on Choji like a python crushing its prey. Give up now, he said. There's no way anyone can escape. If you don't tap out now, I'll squeeze you until your body looks like an old tube of toothpaste. Despite the great pain and lack of oxygen, Choji grinned and replied. Not a chance. Body expansion jutsu. Choji's chakra spiked and his entire body started to grow upwards and outwards. Miss Yumi grit his teeth and continued to squeeze, hoping that the suffocating pressure combined with the Akimichi's own jutsu would choke the boy out. Choji's face began to turn red as he grew even larger. Miss Yumi's teammate, Yoroi, let out a loud chuckle and pointed. Miss Yumi's got him now. That fool's own technique made it even easier for Miss Yumi to squeeze. Your buddy is gonna pass out any second now, Nara. Shikamaru, who had been watching the match with interest instead of daydreaming for once, simply shook his head and said, I hope your friend doesn't trip easily. A sudden scream tore through the air and snapped everyone's attention back to the fight. Miss Yumi was screaming in pain as Choji continued to grow and expand more and more. The boy was already nearly half the size of the Ram Seal statue and was still growing. He's actually getting too big. Miss Yumi screamed inside his own mind. If I hold on for much longer, he's going to tear me in half. Miss Yumi threw everything he had into one last squeeze, but Choji just kept growing. Finally, Miss Yumi's grip on Choji faltered for just a single instant, but even that was enough. With the sound of a rubber band being snapped, Miss Yumi shot off of Choji's body like a taut rubber band. He crashed into the Ram Seal statue and dangled, his limbs limp and stretched to their limits, but still intact, hanging off the side of the statue. Miss Yumi Tsurugi is unable to continue. The winner is Choji Akimichi. Hayate announced as an entire squad of medics began pulling Miss Yumi off the statue and coiling up his ridiculously long limbs and neck. The rest of the Konoharukis cheered as Choji marched up the catwalk stairs. He stopped in front of Shikamaru and held out a hand. Shikamaru rolled his eyes, reached into his shuriken pouch, and handed Choji a bag of triple jalapeno-infused barbecue-flavored potato chips. Choji took the bag with great relish and carefully opened it, trying to be very delicate so not to break any of the chips. Everyone looked at Shikamaru for an explanation, but the Nara genius just shrugged and said it was motivation. Back on the screen, the next pair of combatants' photos were displayed. Will Tamari Sabaku and Rock Lee please come down for the next match? Hayate called out. Tamari smiled as she walked confidently down the catwalk stairs. Lee bounced up and down excitedly as he politely let the lady walk down the stairs first. As soon as Tamari stepped off the stairs, Lee shot down to the arena and immediately began to do warm-up stretches. Tamari looked away from Lee's tight and horribly colored outfit as he stretched. Would you stop that? She asked, turning slightly green herself. I am seeing way too much through that outfit while you're doing, well, whatever it is you're doing. But Guy-sensei always says it is important to warm up properly before a fight, Lee replied happily. It would be very unyouthful of me and disrespectful to you if I were to perform less than my very best in our match because of a pulled muscle. I cannot be disrespectful to such a lovely desert flower as you. If I am, I will do 100 laps around Konoha only on my hands. If I cannot do that, I will do 10,000 push-ups with only my thumbs. If I cannot do that, I will run to Suna and back in only 2 days. If I cannot do that, you might as well get started. Tenten shouted down from the catwalks. When Lee gets like this, he can go on for hours. Hayate looked at Tamari who just shrugged and readied her fan. Hayate looked back at Lee, who was still speaking a mile a minute about eating 10 handfuls of chili peppers if he couldn't climb the Hokage monument with only his teeth, shrugged, coughed, and said. Begin. Tamari unfolded her fan 1/3 of the way in one motion, revealing a single purple orb, and swung with all her might. Wind scythe jutsu. Lee, so distracted by his choices of workouts, never saw the wave of wind until it was already upon him. The wind blew him backwards and he tumbled across the ground. That'll teach you to get distracted in a fight, Tamari said as she folded her fan. I expected more from a leaf ninja, she told Hayate and began to walk back towards the catwalk. I am sorry, have we started already? Lee asked as he picked himself up. He was covered in dust, but looked no worse for wear after Tamari's attack. Yep, Hayate nodded. Next time pay more attention. I will, referee-san. If I do not, I will. Quit it. Shouted Tamari, her right eye twitching angrily. She unfolded a third of her fan again and swung at Lee. But this time, Lee knew it was coming and darted out of the way. He ran at Tamari, looking to engage her into jutsu, but Tamari wasn't about to give away any distance. With speed equal to Lee's, she darted away, swinging her fan to keep Lee at a distance. Lee tried to slow her down by throwing a duo of kunai at her, but Tamari casually blew them away with her fan. You're going to have to do better than that, she called to Lee. I am the mistress of wind, nothing can touch me, and nothing is faster than the wind. She unfolded her fan again, revealing a second purple moon. When you see all 3 moons, it's all over. I see, smiled Lee. Then to defeat you I must become faster than the very wind you tame. That's impossible, Tamari smirked as Lee bent down and rolled down his orange leg warmers. A row of weights was tied to each leg beneath the orange cloth. Tamari laughed as he began to remove them. You think taking off a few pounds of weight will do anything? You can't be serio. Tamari was cut off as Lee dropped the weights, creating 2 massive craters in the arena floor. Tamari quickly blew away the clouds of dust that sprang up from the craters and saw Lee standing still in front of her. Only a fool would have remained still in all that cover, Tamari thought, her keen mind already laying out new strategies to compensate for Lee's weight removal. She cautiously threw a kunai at Lee and smirked when the blade went right through his chest. But the image of Lee didn't pop in a burst of smoke or disappear like a normal clone would. That wasn't a clone. Tamari realized. That was an after image, he's actually moving that fast. Lee reappeared on the far side of the arena, one hand behind his back and the other raised palm up towards Tamari. Now we will see who is faster. Your winder me youthfulness, exclaimed Lee. Tamari opened her fan all the way and took a step back towards the wall. Wind scythe jutsu. She yelled and blew a massive gust of wind across the arena. Even up in the catwalks, the other contestants could feel the powerful winds. But Lee darted to the side and ran towards Tamari. Wind scythe jutsu. Wind scythe jutsu. Tamari shouted over and over again, hurling waves of wind at Lee, but each time, Lee would vanish and reappear even closer than before. This is impossible. How can he be this fast? Tamari worried as Lee closed in on her. Desperate and frustrated, she swung her fan at the green-clad boy in a last-ditch attempt to blow him back or bash him with the metal outside of her fan. Lee leapt over her swing and flipped in the air. Leaf hurricane. Lee shouted and kicked Tamari across the face and stomach. The blows sent the Suna Kenweichi spinning through the air, her fan fell to the ground and, because of her proximity to the wall, Tamari smashed and crumbled against it. Lee appeared at her side immediately with the knife edge of his hand reared back to strike. Tamari slowly opened one eye and stared up at Lee, her stare defiant and seeking mercy at the same time. I'm done, Tamari whispered, ashamed. He's too fast. Hayate immediately raised his hand and announced Lee the winner. Lee smiled his brightest smile, stood and held out his hand to Tamari. I am sorry for kicking you so hard, Lee said. Your wind ninjutsu is very powerful. You are a most youthful opponent and I hope we may have the honor of fighting each other again someday. Tamari looked at the strange boy, doing her best to keep from staring at his incredibly bushy eyebrows. I saw that it out the strangest and politis boy of Viverma, Tamari thought and cautiously took Lee's hand. Lee helped her up to her feet and walked beside her until the medical ninja arrived. They took Tamari to be examined while Lee retrieved his weights. He carefully rewrapped them to his legs before proudly returning to the catwalk. Great job, Lee, his teammate Tenten smiled. I don't think I could have beat her wind would have blown my weapons all over the place. He got lucky, said Niji, Lee's other teammate. Fate decreed he'd face an opponent with no close-range abilities. He would have lost against anyone with real skill. Tenten shot Niji a nasty look, but Lee simply kept smiling as his sensei, Might Guy, congratulated him with a slightly disturbing display of pride and youthfulness. Meanwhile, the screen flashed new photos across the screen. Sakura Haruno vs Ino Yamanaka. Sakura pumped her fist and quickly shoved her way toward the stairs. She hurried down the steps and waited eagerly for Ino. Now everyone will see that I'm better than Ino Pig. It's just too bad Kakashi-sensei had to take Sasu-kun away and now he can't see how superior I am to Ino Pig. Ino, on the other hand, took her time and walked down the steps, her eyes never leaving Sakura's. Let's go already, Ino Pig. What's taking so long? Sakura yelled from the arena floor. Ino rolled her eyes at the pincat and finished walking down the stairs. What's your rush, forehead? Do you have a hot date at the kennels later? Ino spat back with a cocky grin. As exciting as your back and forth banter is, do you think we could get started? Interrupted Hay before Sakura could snap at Ino. Both girls glared at the referee, nodded, and then glared back at each other. Ino Pig is going down. Sakura thought. I have to end this quickly without hurting Sakura thought Ino, thinking back to their childhood adventures. She may be a bit delusional and hot-headed, but she was my best friend. I miss her. Maybe this fight is what we need to move past this pettiness. Fight! Shouted Hate, and Sakura immediately charged at Ino. She drew a kunai out of her pack and crossed her fingers into the ram seal. Clone jutsu, she whispered, and a trio of Sakuras appeared running beside her. The clones' paths crossed over and intertwined with the originals, hoping to throw Ino off as to who was real and who was just an illusion. You're gonna have to do better than that. Ino laughed. She drew 3 shurikens from her pouch and hurled them at Sakura with a flick of her wrist. The shuriken each hit a clone, dispelling them and leaving Sakura without any cover. Damn it. I knew you should have used more than just 3 clones. How are we going to impress Sasuke-kun with only 3 clones? Will you shut up? Sakura argued with herself. Unless you're planning on helping out, just butt out and let me kick Ino Pig's fake blonde ass all over the place. Dream on, Pinky. You better step it up a notch if you think you're going to win like this. You aren't even paying attention to your opponent right now. Oh, shy. Sakura snapped out of her internal argument just in time to feel Ino's fist collide with her jaw. The blow spun Sakura around and dumped her onto her backside. What the hell is wrong with Sakura? Ino wondered. I barely put anything into that punch and it still nearly knocked her out. Why the hell was she just standing there like that? Just give up, Sakura. We both know you aren't ready for the Chunin exams. Please give up before I hurt you, Ino said genuinely. Shut up, Ino Pig. You just want me to quit so you look better for Sasuke-kun. The frightened look flashed through Ino's eyes at the Uchiha's name, followed by a terrible glare. Sasuke. Why the hell would I want anything to do with that asshole after what he did in the forest? What are you talking about? Asked Sakura as she stood up. I know you're only taking the exams so that you can try to undercut me and be with Sasuke-kun. Ino took a step backward, her hands tightened into fists. You don't remember what he did in the forest, do you? Or are you just as sick and twisted as he is? Don't say that about my Sasuke-kun. Ino narrowed her eyes at Sakura. I really didn't want to do this to you, Sakura, but you need a wake-up call. Mind transfer jutsu. Sakura let out a scream as Ino's consciousness invaded hers and flooded the Pinkette's mind with images from the forest of death. Hello girls, Sasuke grinned as he approached. You don't know how glad I am that you're both here. All this excitement has really given me a big appetite. Sasuke-kun, what happened to you? Asked Ino. There's no need to be worried, Ino, no need to fear my new power. I finally have the way to avenge my clan and move on. Don't you want to help me revive my clan? Sasuke asked and reached out to touch Ino. She shrunk away from his touch and his fingers grazed her broken arm. Sasuke, my arm. Ino wailed and tried to stumble backwards, but Sasuke was too fast. He lashed out and grabbed her by the front of her shirt. He pulled her close to him, ignoring her cries of pain and fear. What's the matter, Ino? I thought you'd love to be this close to me. Isn't that what you and Sakura always fought about? Ino cringed and turned her head away from Sasuke's. His breath was foul, and the dark marks continued to spread across his face. Sakura. Ino whispered a plea for help. Sakura struggled to get up but fell back down after only a few inches. Don't worry about Sakura. I'll have her right after you, Sasuke leered. Like I said, all that fighting left me with a big appetite. He tightened his grip on Ino's shirt and pulled, ripping the top in two and revealing Ino's pale, bra-clad chest. Her short skirt quickly followed. Sasuke's lust-filled eyes widened in their appreciation of Ino's assets, and his hand reached toward her again. Please someone, Ino whispered and closed her eyes tight. She felt Sasuke's fingertips on her bra, felt the pit in her stomach deepen and repulsion crawl up her spine. Get out of our head. Inner Sakura roared and cancelled out Ino's jutsu. Ino's conscience flew back into her own body, actually knocking her backwards from the force of her expulsion. How the hell did Sakura kick me out like that? It was almost like there was someone else already in her mind. Meanwhile, Sakura had fallen to her knees, clutching her large forehead. I don't believe it, she whispered. I'm sorry, Sakura, but you needed to see what happened, Ino replied. She felt horrible for exposing Sakura to the truth and sick to her stomach. I can't believe you'd make up such horrible, disgusting lies. Sakura roared. I could understand Naruto making things up about Sasuke-kun, the idiot has always been jealous of Sasuke's skills and handsomeness. But you're supposed to love Sasuke-kun. What? Shouted Ino. I bet you made all that up just to drive me away so you can have Sasuke-kun all to yourself. Sakura continued. Well, it's not gonna happen, Ino pig. With a snarl, Sakura charged at Ino and smashed her fist into Ino's cheek. The blow knocked Ino down, and Sakura followed up with a brutal kick to Ino's midsection. Ino skipped off the ground and bounced twice before coming to rest a few feet away. You better call it, Sakura told the referee. She's done. We totally showed her that we're the only ones that deserve to be with Sasuke-kun. Paige started to walk towards Ino to check on her, but Ino suddenly burst into a cloud of smoke. A broken tree branch, taken from the forest of death, appeared on the ground in her place. A substitution, realized Sakura as she began to search for Ino. There was no sign of her, though the smoke from the substitution hit a small portion of the arena still. We should have seen that coming. Don't argue with me, just help me look, Sakura argued. She drew a kunai and walked toward the cloud of dissipating smoke. She squinted and just barely made out the blurry shape of a ponytail. Gotcha! Sakura shouted and threw her kunai. There was a clang of metal on metal as Ino intercepted the kunai by throwing one of her own. I wanted to take it easy on you, Sakura, because we used to be friends, Ino said as she stepped fully out of what was left of the smoke cloud, but your blindness and thick-headed denial has gone too far. Ah. You're the one that's lying and trying to make me look bad, Ino pig. Sakura growled and threw a wild haymaker at Ino. Ino sighed and slipped under it with a speed that dwarfed anything Sakura was remotely capable of. She reached out and grabbed the back of Sakura's head with both hands. Ino drove her left knee into Sakura's stomach, pulled down on Sakura's head, and smashed her right knee into Sakura's nose. The nose broke with a sickening crunch and spurt of blood. Sakura let out a gurgling scream and tried to pry Ino's hands off her head. Ino let go with her left hand, keeping a grip on the back of Sakura's neck with her right, and grabbed onto Sakura's flailing right wrist. Jumping into the air, Ino kicked her right leg into Sakura's stomach and flung her left leg over Sakura's outstretched arm and across her neck. Both girls fell to the ground, Sakura's arm stretched out from her shoulder and her body pinned down by Ino's legs. Ino squeezed her knees together and arched her hips upright, hyperextending Sakura's arm and threatening to break it. Sakura screamed in pain and frantically slammed her free hand on the floor, tapping out. Paige appeared above Ino and quickly relaxed Ino's hold before she broke Sakura's arm. Ino rolled away and looked down at Sakura in disgust. We're through, Sakura, she said. Don't ever talk to me or come near me, don't even look at me until you come to your senses. And you can have Sasuke if you're sick enough to have him. Sakura looked up at Ino, bleeding and crying, wondering why Ino had hurt her like that before the medics took her away. Ino climbed back up to the catwalks and, after being congratulated by her teammates and checked out by a medic, approached Naruto. I don't know if I said it the other day, I was pretty out of it, but thank you for rescuing us. Well, rescuing me in particular. If you ever need anything. You're welcome, Naruto smiled gently. I'm glad you're okay and off the Sasuke team bandwagon. Ha. Sakura can keep that 6 and off a bitch. Besides, us blondes ought to stick together, she said with a wink and walked away. Naruto stared, slightly bewildered, and could have sworn he saw the girl's hips sway from side to side a little more than usual. He was so befuddled by Ino's actions that he missed the announcement for the next match-up. By the time Naruto caught on, the match between Kiba and Dosu was already over. The Sound Ninja's bracer was particularly brutal to the Inuzuka's enhanced senses. One swipe and Kiba was down for the count, literally howling in pain. The next 2 matches went equally quickly. First, Shikamaru easily trapped Zaku in his shadow possession jutsu and forced Zaku to point his own hand beneath his chin. Shikamaru threatened to channel chakra through the wind pathway in the hand and blow Zaku's head clean off if he didn't surrender. Zaku tried to call Shikamaru's bluff, but when he felt the familiar feeling of wind building within his arm, Zaku quickly surrendered. Gaara of the Desert paired off against Yoroi Akado. Gaara stood stone still in the center of the ring, while Yoroi boasted about his clan's special bloodline. With a chakra-enhanced burst of speed, Yoroi sprinted at Gaara with his hands outstretched. Before Yoroi could reach Gaara and grab hold of him to drain his chakra, 5 tendrils of sand shot up from the floor at Gaara's feet and wrapped around Yoroi's limbs and neck. You're pathetic, Gaara said without remorse. Sand coffin. The sand engulfed Yoroi and held him up in the air. Gaara raised an open hand and pointed it at the human-shaped cast of sand. Sand burial, he said and closed his fist. There was a muffled scream and squelch inside the sand cast as it collapsed into a hand-sized ball. Gaara left Yoroi's remains on the arena floor and recalled his sand as he walked back up to the catwalk. Everyone, Naruto included, gave him a wide berth. There's something definitely wrong with that guy, Naruto thought as Gaara walked past. He's a right monster, a troll or ogre with sand. With his new senses, Naruto could easily make out the smell of old blood among the sand of Gaara's gourd. A second whiff smelt of dried out tanuki, but Naruto shrugged it off as pictures began streaking across the board once again. The short break was interrupted as the board began its randomizing for the next match. Tenten and Kankuro quickly made their way to the arena. This is gonna be a piece of cake, Kankuro laughed. This chick doesn't stand a chance. Chick. Tenten repeated with a raised eyebrow. Oh, I am so going to make this hurt. Start the match. But the medics haven't cleared the area yet, Hey protested. I said start it. Tenten roared, doing her best impression of Iruka's famous demon head jutsu. Heiei jumped back embarrassed, but started the match. Tenten let out a fearsome roar as she hurled a brace of kunai at Kankuro. The Suna ninja quickly ducked and returned fire with a trio of shuriken. Tenten reached into her leg pouch and pulled out a thick scroll. She held the scroll out in front of her and used it to bat away Kankuro's shuriken. Rising dragon. She yelled and unfurled the scroll into the air. A hand seal later and a swarm of weapons of all shapes and sizes descended upon Kankuro. "You gotta be kidding me." He shouted and tried to dodge, but there were simply too many. The dozens of kunai and shuriken and knives and spiked maces and spears tore through Kankuro's flesh like paper. Kankuro somehow remained standing, despite the dozens of terrible wounds scattered across his torso and limbs. "That's what you get for thinking that a kunoichi is going to be an easy win," Tenten said triumphantly. She turned to walk away, but her attention was captured by a sudden, spastic grinding sound from Kankuro. "What the hell is that?" Tenten wondered out loud. She turned back and peered at the broken, hole-ridden body, just noticing for the first time that there was no blood coming out of any of the wounds. The metal arm shot out of Kankuro's chest and a set of spindly, metal fingers grasped for Tenten's throat. Tenten slipped out of the way at the last second, and the metal fingers closed around a piece of her shirt, tearing it instead of her throat. "What the hell is that thing?" Tenten shouted as the metal arm retracted back into Kankuro's body. Sinister laughter came from the bundle of bandages strapped to Kankuro's back. "I see you've met Crow," the voice said. "Don't be shy, let me introduce you to him properly." Kankuro burst out of the bundle of bandages while the humanoid-looking puppet tore off its Kankuro disguise. The puppet was a three-eyed, four-armed monster covered with a wild mop of brown hair and a tattered coverall. Kankuro stood behind his puppet, fingers outstretched. Whenever he moved a digit, even the slightest twitch, the crow puppet responded instantly. "It's like they're connected to each other. Think, Tenten, think. Puppets need strings to move, all you have to do is cut the strings, and then it'll be useless." But Tenten couldn't see the strings manipulating the puppet. As far as she could tell, there was no visible connection between Kankuro and his puppet. "You can look all day long, girly, but unless you got one of those fancy Konoha bloodlines, you're never going to see anything," Kankuro boasted. "Senbon cannon." The puppet's mouth yawned open, and a storm of senbon needles spat at Tenten. With a sailor-like curse, Tenten rolled out of the way, only to have to leap away from a torrent of kunai and shuriken fired from slots in the puppet's hands. Tenten was just a hair too slow, and one of the shuriken managed to scratch her. She hissed in pain and clutched at the small wound. "You might as well surrender now," Kankuro said. "Every one of Crow's weapons is coated in a nightbane compound. Nightbane only grows in the northern wastes of Suna and when introduced into the body, causes its victims to experience increasingly horrible visions and hallucinations until they eventually drive the mind into such a frenzy that it shuts down to stop the terrors." Tenten started at her scratched arm and then back at Kankuro. "You bastard, how could you use such a thing on your weapons? We're ninja, princess, by definition we don't play by the rules. Now, I'd surrender if I were you. That is, if you want the antidote. Those visions should be starting any second now." Kankuro grinned and held up a tiny vial of clear liquid. Tenten grit her teeth and glared at Kankuro. Already her vision was fading in and out and swirling out of control. Terrible bright flashes of colored light exploded in her peripheral vision, nonsensical shapes that slowly became more distinct. Tenten tried to wipe her eyes clear, but the shapes and colors only increased with each passing second. The shapes whirled and whirled into hideous monsters shaped and dressed like her friends, but transformed into demons and succubian creatures with vile protuberances, all reaching out for her. "Leave me alone." She screamed and stumbled backwards. She cornered herself, her back to a wall, and swung a kunai in each hand at the invisible monsters. "Just give up already," Kankuro shouted across the arena. "I'll give you the antidote and it will all go away. Just shut up and leave me alone." Tenten screamed again and opened her bloodshot eyes. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a single small scroll. Biting her thumb for a drop of blood, Tenten unsealed the scroll, transforming it into a massive roll twice as large as she was. With a deep breath, Tenten crossed her fingers into the ram seal and shouted, "Scroll Shadow Clone Jutsu." Another massive scroll burst into existence beside the original. No, there's no way Guy wouldn't be foolish enough to teach her a forbidden jutsu like shadow cloning, thought the Hokage. "When did you learn such a powerful jutsu?" wondered Guy. "Your flames of youth are truly bright, Tenten." "Ambisimnity and playing with shadow clones anymore," grinned Naruto. Tenten wavered as she struggled to stand, using the scroll shadow clone jutsu had left her nearly completely drained of chakra. She rapidly shook her hand and squeezed her eyes closed as a vision of her mother, killed in the nine-tailed fox attack, lurched toward her. The vision raised a decaying hand and groped for Tenten's throat. With a high-pitched scream, Tenten reached out and pulled on the ripcords, holding the scrolls closed. With a yank, the scrolls unfurled and revealed 1,000 small storage seals on each scroll. "What the hell is this?" Kankuro muttered as he looked at the twin scrolls. Rising Dragon. Bahamut Shuriken Bomb. Tenten shouted. Instantly, 10 shuriken burst from each of the storage seals and flew at Kankuro, over 20,000 whirling bladed weapons that covered the entire arena in a light-blocking cloud of metal. "Oh, come on." Kankuro complained and jumped behind Crow, hoping the puppet could block the shuriken. The shuriken slammed into the ground and walls with a clang and a thick cloud of dust filled the arena. Tenten collapsed and curled into a tight ball, the hallucinations beginning to overwhelm her. She slipped into unconsciousness, whimpering and twitching occasionally. Across the arena, the dust slowly began to clear. Kankuro was pinned spread eagle to the floor by shuriken, his clothes and shredded and blood dripping from several wounds. The puppet Crow was utterly shredded, there was not a whole single piece or portion of the puppet remaining. Heiei looked at Tenten and then back at Kankuro. "Can you get up?" he asked. Kankuro struggled for a moment, but between his wounds and the shuriken pinning his clothes down, he couldn't budge. He let out a groan of frustration, then yelped in pain as one of his wounds stretched open, and finally gave up and laid down. Heiei shrugged. Neither combatant can continue. This match is a draw. He walked over to Kankuro and reached into the Suna ninja's pocket. "Thank you," Heiei said and held up the vial of antidote. Heiei tossed the vial to the approaching medical ninja that were trying to restrain the flailing Tenten. One of the medical ninja caught the vial and, after examining it quickly to verify its authenticity, administered it to Tenten. Seconds later, Tenten relaxed and her breathing returned to normal. Meanwhile, another group of medical ninja treated Kankuro's wounds while freeing him from the floor, while a cleanup crew repaired the arena. "I can't believe she killed Crow," Kankuro whimpered and began collecting the pieces of his puppet. He wrapped the pieces up in the remains of the puppet's coverall and quietly walked back to his siblings on the catwalk. While his sister expressed her obligatory sympathies, though secretly she was glad Tenten had proven that Kunoichi are not to be messed with, the board sprang to life again. Naruto Uzumaki vs Kabuto Yakushi. Finally. Naruto grinned and popped the kinks out of his neck. He secured Mjolnir on his belt and leapt over the railing. He plummeted like a stone to the arena floor and landed with a heavy thud, cracking the tiles around him. Kabuto was much more reserved as he walked toward and down the stairs. He carefully locked eyes with his Jonin-sensei as he walked down the stairs. The yellow-eyed Jonin shook slightly and Kabuto's eyes widened a tiny fraction. "He still wants me to hold back," he thought. "First he changes the plan by having me continue to compete, now he wants me to still hold back, even though he knows my opponent is the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. I hope my chakra scalpels are more than enough to advance. My other abilities will just blow my cover." Kabuto buried his thoughts and put on a bright smile as he walked into the arena across from Naruto. My. You seem to have had quite the growth spurt since the first exam, Naruto-kun. Did you awaken some forgotten bloodline or have you been holding out on us all this time?" "You could say I'm a new man, Kabuto-san," Naruto replied. Both combatants nodded toward Heiei and the referee began the match. "I'm sorry for this, Naruto, but I'll be sure not to do any permanent damage to you." Kabuto darted toward Naruto at high speed, his hands glowing blue and pulled back to strike. He stabbed his right hand at Naruto's shoulder, but Naruto sidestepped at the last moment. Kabuto followed with a slash towards Naruto's knees, but Naruto jumped high into the air and landed on the far side of the arena. "You move well despite your increase in size," Kabuto complimented. "But you didn't move well enough," Kabuto said and pointed at Naruto's shoulder. A thin line had been cut into the fabric of Naruto's vest, right where Naruto's neck met his shoulder. Naruto looked over at the mark and shrugged. "Next time, ye may wish to cut more flesh and less cloth," Naruto smirked, his language slipping into what he was beginning to call Thor speak, as he had inherited the god of thunder's love for battle, as well as his powers and memories. "Now it is my turn. Have at thee." Naruto shouted and charged at Kabuto. Naruto swung a fist at Kabuto's head, but the teen ducked and jumped away in the nick of time. "He's so fast." Kabuto worried. "He's probably just as fast as I am holding back. That should be impossible for a genin, Jinchuriki or not." Naruto interrupted Kabuto's thoughts as he charged again. Naruto crossed his fingers in a familiar ram seal and shouted Shadow Clone Jutsu. As he charged. There was a poof of smoke on either side of him, but when the smoke cleared, the two clones were frail-looking, weak zombie versions of himself. "Oh man, not again," Naruto groaned as he skidded to a halt. His clones looked at him pathetically, and a snicker of laughter began somewhere in the catwalks. Kabuto began chuckling as well. "Oh Naruto-kun, you really shouldn't try such advanced jutsu until you have better chakra control," Kabuto smiled. "Your clones look like they'd rather die than exist for another moment." "Shut thy mouth," Naruto yelled. "My clones would be thrashing me right now if I was 100%. Sadly for you, they are not. Perhaps I should do them a favor and put them out of their misery." Kabuto grinned and hurled two kunai at the clones. Both kunai struck the clones in the forehead, dispelling them instantly. Kabuto quickly hurled 2 smoke grenades at Naruto's feet as well and enveloped the entire arena in thick black smoke. Naruto coughed as the arid smoke burned his lungs and choked him. He searched and searched, but Naruto couldn't find any trace of Kabuto through the smoke. "I heard you've been in a situation like this before," Kabuto's voice called out through the smoke. "When your team was in Wave Country, wasn't it?" "Yeah, you are being very original, Kabuto-san," Naruto remarked. "Are you going to copy Zabuza even more by telling me the 8 silent kill points on my body?" "Haha, Zabuza only knew 8. Naruto, there are literally dozens of points on the human body that can result in your death or incapacitation. Like rupturing your thoracic aorta, 5th lumbar down on the spine. You'll bleed out in seconds. Or slicing through the subclavian nerve, disabling your entire arm from shoulder to fingertips." Naruto felt Kabuto's cut tear into his shoulder, but when he reached up to clutch the wound, Naruto felt no blood, only a swift numbing sensation that raced down his left arm. "Chakra scalpels are usually only used in surgery," Kabuto's voice whispered through the smoke. "But I find they are very handy at cutting apart opponents without ever breaking their skin." Naruto tried to make a fist, but found he couldn't move his left fingers. He growled in annoyance and swung Mjolnir up over his head. "Enough tricks." Naruto shouted and summoned a gust of wind with a swing of his hammer. The smoke blew away and reveled Kabuto just to Naruto's right, his hands encased in blue-white chakra. "That was quite clever, Naruto-kun," Kabuto smiled as he stepped backward. "If you thought that was clever, you will love this." Naruto grinned and hurled his right fist at Kabuto. The punch slammed into Kabuto's chest. Kabuto felt the air rush out of his chest and felt a rib crack. Blood and spittle sprayed out of Kabuto's mouth and he fell backwards. He hit the ground hard and skidded twice before careening into the arena wall. Everyone, not including Naruto but especially Kabuto, was shocked at how fast Naruto's blow landed. Some more experienced searched for a jutsu or weights that would have increased Naruto's speed, others just stared in shock and awe. "Verily, that was but a minute fraction of mind power," Naruto said as he walked calmly toward the downed Kabuto. "Withdraw from the battle and live to fight again. Do not force me to continue to harm a comrade needlessly." "This isn't good," Kabuto thought. "If I continue to fight at this level, that idiot might actually beat me. But if I give too much away, Master will be unpleased, and I've seen what happens to those who fail to please Master." Kabuto shot a nervous glance toward the gathered Jonin instructors and the Hokage. His eyes met the yellow-eyed Jonin's only for a heartbeat, but the message sent between the two was clear enough. "Win the fight, but don't reveal too much." "I should say the same thing to you, Naruto-kun," Kabuto smiled. He slowly, painfully, picked himself up onto his knees and held out his hands. Chakra formed across his palms, and Kabuto pressed them onto his chest and stomach. Instantly, Kabuto's broken ribs knit and his internal bleeding ceased. He stood, looking as fresh as he had when he started the fight. "I'm afraid that you've forced my hand and that I can no longer hold back against you. Please don't take this thrashing personally." Naruto smiled and raised Mjolnir in response. Kabuto drew a kunai from his pouch and disappeared. A second later he appeared above Naruto and tried to bury the kunai in Naruto's neck. Naruto whirled and blocked with his hammer at the last second, but Kabuto was gone before he could counterattack. Naruto braced himself, waiting for the next attack to come. "Too slow," Kabuto whispered in Naruto's ear just before he lashed out with a vicious kick to the small of Naruto's back. The kick sent Naruto flying across the arena and into the far wall, right beside the mark Kabuto made earlier, and buried him in a small pile of rubble. "You may want to get a medic down here right away," Kabuto told the referee. "His spine should be shattered between the 5th and 6th vertebrae." Pei teleported to Naruto's side, looked down at the prostrate boy, and saw Naruto moving beneath the rubble. He stepped back and crossed his arms over his chest. "Fights will go on as long as they have to. This match will continue." Kabuto smiled politely at the referee. "But I do not wish to cause even more damage to a fellow Leaf Ninja." "Then quit," Hade answered sternly. "If you don't have what it takes to finish the job, you aren't ready for Chunin." Kabuto bristled at the referee's words, but did his best to control his emotions. That kick should have snapped every bone in his spine. How could he have survived it? If I had moved any faster or kicked any harder, the Hokage and the other Jonin would have definitely suspected something. I'll have to finish this as quickly and easily as I can. Kabuto stalked toward Naruto and focused chakra to his right hand. He stood over Naruto and carefully kicked away chunks of rubble until he had a clear glimpse of Naruto's back. "I am sorry, Naruto-kun, but I don't have any choice." "Hopefully, you won't feel a thing," Kabuto said and pulled his hand back to strike. Kabuto plunged his chakra scalpel into the center of Naruto's back, slicing through muscles, organs, even bone. Naruto's body shuddered and a muffled scream cut through the arena. Kabuto withdrew his hand and deactivated his scalpels. He straightened out and put on his best sad smiling face. He turned to walk away, trying his hardest to look regretful, when he heard the loud pop. Kabuto spun around and saw a cloud of white smoke where Naruto's body used to be. The shadow clone. Kabuto exclaimed and searched for the real Naruto. His search ended with the sight of a gray blur as it crashed into his chest. Kabuto's lungs emptied as Mjolnir drove him up into the air. The initial blow broke 2 of Kabuto's ribs, while the fall back to the ground broke another 2. He collapsed onto the ground and curled into a painful ball, barely able to lift his head to look for what hit him. Mjolnir hovered in midair above Kabuto like an executioner's axe, its thick stone head pointed downward. Kabuto felt a shiver of fear cut through him. The hammer spun in the air, righting itself, and flew back across the arena to Naruto's outstretched hand. "Thou wouldst slay a comrade in cold blood. Foolish knave, thou did not reckon the might of Thor." Naruto said in pure Thor speak. Lightning cackled off Mjolnir and reflected in Naruto's stormy blue eyes. Yield. Kabuto tried to steal another glace at his Jonin sensei, but the yellow-eyed Jonin was gone. Kabuto's heart sank, he had failed his lord and master, and he knew there would be severe consequences to that. "I give up," Kabuto muttered and waved for the medical ninja. The medics rushed to his side and began healing his shattered torso. Meanwhile, Naruto's face was plastered with a silly fox-like grin as he turned and struggled to walk up the stairs to the catwalk, leaning heavily on the railing. When he reached the catwalk, Naruto plopped down on the ground, leaned his head back against the wall, and let out a tired sigh. "Naruto, are you alright?" asked Choji. "I'll be fine," Naruto smiled weakly. "That kick messed up my back pretty good." "You're lucky you didn't break your back," Shikamaru interjected. "And you got really lucky with that shadow clone." Naruto looked up at the pineapple-headed Nara and could see the wheels turning inside the strategist's head. Naruto grinned, "Leave it to Shikamaru to see through everything right away." "What do you mean?" asked Ino. "Shadow clones are Naruto's best move." "You heard it yourself, Naruto's chakra is still all messed up from the Forest of Death," Shikamaru explained. "The fact that he didn't create 100 clones like usual is proof of that." "He's right," Naruto nodded. "If Heiei-sen hadn't stood over me exactly the way he did, I never would have been able to pull off that clone substitution and hide behind him." "Not a bad strategy for a loudmouth blonde," Shikamaru said with a lazy smile before Ino bashed him on the head. "What was that about loudmouth blondes, you lazy ass?" Ino roared. Shikamaru held the growing lump on his head, but wisely didn't reply save for whispering. "Troublesome." Choji, meanwhile, laughed his large buttocks off, spraying crumbs of potato chips everywhere. The board sprang to life again, but everyone on the catwalks was silent. They knew who was left and the repercussions that this match would have. "Neji Hyuga and Hinata Hyuga report to the arena," Heiei announced. Neji walked to the ring confidently, his bandaged hands flexing, a smirk fixed upon his face. Hinata, on the other hand, looked ready to faint. She looked terrified and flinched when Heiei called her name. Down on the arena floor, Kurenai watched as her student meekly made her way to the catwalk stairs. She wanted to shout out some kind of encouragement to Hinata, but the Hokage had strictly ruled that there could be no coaching of any kind from any of the Jonin sensei during the preliminaries. While she walked down the stairs, Hinata stole a quick glance at her crush, hoping he'd be watching her and that seeing him watching her might give her the courage to face her cousin. But Naruto was still sitting against the wall, eyes closed, lightly snoring. "Naruto-kun deserves his rest," Hinata thought sadly. "He worked so hard to get here, I must show him that I've worked just as hard, even if he isn't watching right now." Hinata straightened up as she stepped off the stairs and did her best not to flinch beneath her cousin's glare. "I've been looking forward to this for a long time, Hinata-sama," Neji spat out the honorific like it was poisonous. "You should just drop out now. A failure like you doesn't deserve to be in the main branch of the Hyuga clan, much less being promoted to Chunin. Fate decreed that you will lose this match the moment I was chosen to be your opponent." "I mustn't give up, I mustn't give up, I mustn't give up," Hinata chanted inside her head. "Naruto-kun would never give up, so neither can I." "I don't believe you," Hinata whispered back. "What did you say? If you are going to talk back to your superiors, at least have the courage to do it so they may hear you," Neji yelled back. "I don't believe you." Hinata shouted loudly, so loudly that she actually frightened herself in the process. "I didn't know cold of it. We are free to make our own fate," she continued. "Just as I am free to stand and fight the battles of my choosing. Only fools fight against fate," Neji sneered and activated his Byakugan. "I would say goodbye to your pathetic friends and teacher, Hinata-san. After I am through showing you fate's true plan, you will never be able to see them again." Hinata didn't answer, she just activated her own Byakugan and stepped into her gentle fist stance. Heiei stepped in between the two Hyuga and looked at them both. "Remember, I will step in if needed," he said with a small shot of killing intent aimed at Neji. Hinata Hyuga vs Neji Hyuga fight. Neji immediately rushed at Hinata, thrusting his chakra-tipped fingers at her chest. Hinata quickly leapt backward, using her natural flexibility to avoid Neji's follow-up strikes. This continued for several minutes, Niji rushing forward in attack and Hinata dodging at the last second to avoid the deadly gentle fist strikes. "Fight back, you coward," Niji snarled, growing more and more frustrated. "You're only delaying the inevitable." Hinata didn't reply, all her focus was fixed on dodging Niji's next strike. In his frustration, Niji overextended his thrust and left himself open. Hinata darted in and landed a single blow on Niji's left arm. Niji jumped back, his left arm hanging useless at his side. What just happened? Ino wondered from the catwalks. All Hinata did was poke Niji in the arm. "You don't have a Hyuga on your team, so allow me to explain," said Lee. Gai-sensei taught Tenten and Igoken, the strong fist style of Taijutsu, which focuses on blunt force trauma, bruising, and breaking bone. But the Hyuga clan's Taijutsu, the gentle fist, does internal damage, attacking the nerves and chakra pathways and chakra points directly. One touch, a single poke, can be devastating, even lethal. Niji is a true genius, a prodigy in his clan's Taijutsu, and he is my eternal rival for it, Lee finished seriously. Amazing, Ino thought as she watched Niji and Hinata battle. A sly smile crept over her face. "I wonder if I could combine that with my family's ability. Being able to disable someone with a single touch would make mind walking a whole lot safer." Back in the arena, Niji was nearly frothing with anger. His chakra pathways were still intact and undamaged, Hinata had merely nicked a nerve in his upper arm. Already feeling was returning to his fingertips, but it was his pride that had been damaged most of all. "How dare that weakling lay a hand on me? She may be a member of the main branch, but she is still nothing compared to me. I am the genius, I am last year's Rookie of the Year." Enraged, Niji dashed at Hinata, moving much faster than he had before. He reached out with his injured arm and grabbed a hold of Hinata's right wrist. Channeling chakra into his fingertips, Niji quickly attacked the chakra points along her right arm. Hinata let out a painful cry as her entire arm shut down completely. "You truly are weak," Niji sneered. "Even when I left you an opening, your attack was pathetic and weak. You didn't even manage to shut down the chakra point in my shoulder, you barely managed to tweak the nerve." Niji grabbed Hinata's coat sleeve with his free hand and ripped the sleeve away. Hinata's bare arm was covered in fingertip-sized bruises, her chakra points completely closed by Niji's attacks. Cruelly, he channeled chakra into his pointer finger and dug it into one of the bruises. Hinata's scream echoed throughout the arena. And it was this scream that woke Naruto up. "What the heck is going on?" he muttered as he stood up. "What was that noise?" "That jerk Niji is torturing Hinata," Ino growled. Naruto stepped to the railing and stared down at the two Hyugas. Niji continued to press his finger into each of Hinata's bruises, making her scream each time. To the side, Naruto could see Asuma-sensei's hand on Kurenai-sensei's shoulder, keeping her from interfering in the match. The red-eyed woman's pain and helplessness was written all over her face. It quickly turned to shock and horror when Niji released Hinata's arm and slammed both chakra-powered palms into Hinata's stomach. The blow sent Hinata flying across the arena and onto the ground next to the catwalk stairs. "Hinata is unable to continue," Hayate immediately announced. "Niji Hyuga is the winner." Of course you'd step in for a member of the Hyuga main house," Niji sneered as he walked toward the stairs. "Those weak cowards probably paid to have Hinata advance this far in the exams." "Then Niji Nai-san," Hinata whispered as he began to walk up the steps. "What do you want?" he asked with disdain. I'm glad you won," Hinata whispered after she coughed up a mouthful of blood. "You've been forced into the branch family by a cruelty of fate, perhaps things are balanced now that you defeated a member of the main family today." Niji stopped on the stairs, his fingers tightening around the railing. You let me win, didn't you?" "Of course you did, you're in the main family. You could have activated the seal on my forehead anytime you wanted to and forced me to submit. How dare you? Fate decreed that I would be made superior to you. Fate decreed that I would be the victor here today, not your filthy charity." Niji's Byakugan reactivated and he dashed for Hinata in a white blur, his fingers aimed for her heart. Across the arena, Kurenai elbowed Asuma in the groin and raced for Hinata, Guy lunged for Niji, and Hayate sped to get between them. But they would all be too late to stop Niji. There was a sudden crack of thunder, and a grey blur appeared in front of Hinata. Too late to stop, Niji struck anyway, confident that whatever had managed to get between him and Hinata would be obliterated and she would quickly follow. Niji let out a loud scream of pain as his chakra-tipped fingers shattered against the Uruhammer, mjolnir. Clutching his broken hand, Niji stared at the hammer, then spun around to see its wielder walking down the stairs. "How dare you interfere? A commoner like you has no business sticking his nose in Hyuga business," he shouted at Naruto. "You would strike down your own defenseless blood and you rave at my interference." Naruto growled back, his voice deepening like thunder. "Thou art nothing but a rabid dog biting at the hand that seeks to do you no harm." "Did the main branch pay you to look after her too?" Niji asked. She is a failure, not worthy of the title she was given. Fate allows me to do as I will because I am the superior. Fate. Heh, I have met Fate herself, Hyuga. I have defied her and her works many times, and I can surely say that you are no agent of hers. I do not understand why you hate your innocent and caring cousin, but if you lift another finger to harm her, you will suffer the wrath of Thor," said Naruto as he summoned Mjolnir back to his hand. By now the three Jonin had arrived and placed themselves between the three genin. Kurenai immediately looked after Hinata and waved the medical ninja over to take her to the hospital immediately, while Guy and Hei placed themselves between Neji and Naruto. Enough of this. The Hokage's voice boomed across the arena. Another childish outburst and I will see you all disqualified. Now, will all the winners please return to the center of the arena. The victorious genin marched down the stairs and spread out in front of the Ram Seal statue. Everyone gave Gaara wide berth, Hei stood precautiously behind Naruto, and Guy remained beside Neji just in case. Congratulations on advancing to the Chunin exam finals. The Hokage beamed. The finals will be a single elimination tournament, no holds barred, taking place in exactly 1 month, giving you all time to rest, recover, and train for your matchups. In front of me is a box filled with numbers. Each contestant will select a number from the box to determine your matchup in the finals. Each genin picked a small numbered ball out a simple box Anko carried past the line of genin. Each genin held out their number for Ibiki to see and write down on a small scrap of paper. Since Sasuke was still in the infirmary, he was given the last number remaining in the box. Once he recorded everyone's number, Ibiki handed the list to the Hokage. The matchups for the Chunin exam finals are: Match 1. Naruto Uzumaki vs Neji Hyuga. Match 2. Choji Akimichi vs Shino Aburam. Match 3. Ino Yamanaka vs Sasuke Uchiha. Match 4. Rock Lee vs Gaara of the Desert. Match 5. Shikamaru Nara vs Dosu. These matches are all final, said the Hokage. Again, the competition will resume in precisely 1 month. Until then you are all dismissed and on leave. Congratulations. But that the Jonin senseis sought out their triumphant or dejected students. Asuma Sarutobi could barely contain his enjoyment, all 3 of his students had advanced into the finals. The second generation of Ino Shikacho was beginning as a huge success. The Hokage was also very pleased as the large majority of remaining genin were from Konoha. Naruto didn't even bother looking for Kakashi, he knew the Jonin would be too busy checking on Sasuke to be there now. Instead he cast a sideways look at Neji, who was standing with Guy and Lee. Guy and Lee were shouting praises over youth and how they were going to start training for the finals immediately. Neji was glaring at Naruto, trying to look as tough as possible, while one of the medics bandaged his broken fingers. A small grin crept across Naruto's face as he drew Mjolnir from his belt. "Hey Neji," he called. "You have something more to say, commoner? Just this. You had better give your soul to Kami, because your ass belongs to the god of thunder," Naruto said and vanished in a bolt of lightning. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow Nataku's Wrath for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.